Good morning. It is a Friday edition of Glenn Clark Radio. I'm Glenn. He's Griffin. If it's Friday, that must make him the chief grand poobah here at Press Box. Stan the Fan Charles. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. You know, that piece of music, I did not like it when you first started using it. It's really caught on.
I have no feelings towards it whatsoever. We just had no choice because we could only use
I remember
royalty-free music beds and stuff that wouldn't get us kicked off of.
That thing is caught on for me.
It's going to be your entrance music now, your walk-up music at your next Orioles fantasy camp.
I wouldn't go that far.
All right, well, I don't know. I mean, if it works, like you get a hit in your first at bat, you might have to do that. A lot to do on a Friday edition of the program. Coming up in just a couple of minutes. Kirk Goldsberry.
What's he do?
Man, Kirk Goldsberry is a fascinating guy. He's a basketball writer and also considered like one of the godfathers of basketball analytics. Then end up parlaying that into an executive role with the San Antonio Spurs. Now he's left the Spurs. He's gone back to writing. Has a new book coming out called Hoop Atlas. We're going to talk to him about that. And the playoffs, obviously, the Knicks-Sixers series was thrilling. Knicks end up winning late last night. And they're now in.
Any chance he needs with his job with the Spurs that he could use an interpreter?
He's not with the Spurs anymore, Stan,
I didn't pay attention. I'm sorry.
It's
because I'm starting a new career.
I know you've been trying to get into that field for some time now, and it's been a struggle. I see you're still here. See, it's been a bit of an issue. Also coming up this morning, we are going to have our friend John Eisenberg join us right here in studio. John has a new project. It's called The Bird Tapes, and it's fascinating.
About Larry Bird?
No, it's not about Larry Bird. It's about the Birds. It's about the Baltimore Orioles. John, of course, has written a great number of books in his life, including books about the Baltimore Orioles and about Cal Ripken and so he discovered a trove of old interviews that he had done, and he has been sharing them through his website, The Bird Tapes. He's going to tell us more about that, plus it's just a good opportunity to tell some stories. John Eisenberg will be in studio a little bit later on. Also this morning, we'll preview the Kentucky Derby with our buddy Randy Moss from NBC, preview Orioles Reds with Chris Welsh from out in Cincinnati. All of that coming up on a Friday edition of the program. Griffin, I do need a Ryan Mountcastle picture, if you don't mind, so we can post that up behind the board, as got a little pushback yesterday. Stan, I've been doing this man of the match thing for years now. This year we decided to add it here in the studio. Mm-hmm. And I felt...
Where were you doing it previously? Online?
Just on Twitter. Yep.
Yeah, okay.
I felt like I was noticing that I was almost biased towards starting pitchers, that it was becoming increasingly difficult. Like, the first month of the season is over. Who would you say was the Orioles MVP for the first month of the season?
Gunnar Henderson.
Really? Over Adley?
Yeah.
I would say Adley definitively to me was the MVP of the team.
Really?
For the first month of the season. Legitimately. Okay. Like, just unbelievable production, and the fact that he's also the pitching staff's off to a really great start to the season. To me, it would be easily Adley. And I turned around and I looked at the board.
You don't have him.
Adley has not been man of the match once.
Right.
So about a month in, I said, I got to be easier on my bias towards the starting pitcher, or else anytime the starting pitcher is even kind of good, it's going to be the starting pitcher that's going to be man of the match. So I've got to have a little bit of a different standard. So a lot of people were upset that it wasn't Kyle Bradish yesterday. I got a lot of pushback that I didn't make Kyle Bradish man of the match yesterday. And truth be told, given the fact that it was his first start of the season, I think Kyle Bradish was really good yesterday.
Very promising start.
The stuff was outstanding. Got some really bad luck in the first inning, obviously.
The catcher's interference call. I score every game.
Mm-hmm.
I had actually done the line.
Oh, you had already gone ahead and
block,
right.
And I'm waiting, and all of a sudden I'm talking to my cousin. I was sitting in the stands yesterday with my cousin Stuart, and we're talking, and all of a sudden, and I look up,
why are they still on the field?
Why are the Yankees still on the field?
What is going on here?
I totally missed it.
So if not for that, he probably doesn't throw as many pitches.
Yep.
And then he's probably capable of getting out of the fifth inning and giving you maybe not a quality start, because I don't think they was ever going to go 6 yesterday, but something
I thought that was, under the circumstances, a great start.
Under the circumstances, in that context, I completely agree. Given that it was his first start back, all of those things. But it still shows up in the box score as 4 2/3 innings.
Right.
At the same time, the Orioles offense had averaged 2 runs per game over the first 3 games of the series. Had not scored a run on Wednesday night. The offense needed to get going. And 2 separate times yesterday, first via a ball, home run that was a pitch that was low, and he went and got and crushed. And then
he obliterated that
100%.
pitch,
And then a rally after that he started with the base hit. He got the offense going twice yesterday.
I have no problem with that.
That, to me, was why I gave the nod to Ryan Mountcastle as man of the match for yesterday in the Orioles win over the Yankees to win the series. So in a second, we'll put him up on the board for the first time this season.
Isn't that sheet like a little small for the whole season?
It's going to be. We're going to deal with that at some point, Stan. You're 100% right. You know what we call that? A problem for the future. We will deal with it when we need to deal with it.
Sounds like Griffin cut too small a piece. That's what it sounds like to me.
The issue is we use this board for...
I'm kidding. You used it for the Lamar meter.
Well, no, this was the board from the billboard thing that we did.
Oh, okay.
Like a month ago downtown, we had some of the digital billboards. Yeah. And so I just said we should repurpose that board somehow because we had it made. And so that was the idea that we had for it.
Right.
And now it's just going to be, what do we do? Like, clearly, Adley's still going to end up on the board. And I think at some point, John Means is going to end up on the board. And there are
Jorge Mateo may end up on the board.
Yesterday, there was an argument for Jorge Mateo. He had, obviously, speaking of balls that were crushed. My God, that was a bomb.
Yeah, that was a nice home run.
What a bomb that was for Jorge Mateo. And continues to remind you why it is that he's got a roster spot, because you want to keep ignoring it. He hits lefties. That's what he does, and he continues to earn the at-bats against lefties moving forward, and I will not go to war about Jorge Mateo's roster spot.
You know what my big takeaway from the last 4 days was? Watching – oh, okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was
watching the Yankees up close, they don't scare me at all.
Well, their defense
as a team,
stinks.
they don't – their offense is not really that.
While Aaron
Volpe,
Judge,
Soto, and Judge are real good. Stanton and Rizzo, they've got big names, and they both have been kind of historic figures.
I don't know that Stanton's even trying anymore.
He's trying. He's they've got. I asked Luke yesterday. I said, are they out of his contract after this year? He's got 3 more years after this year.
That is rough. Oh, that is rough.
It's like $100 million. I'm sure it's close to $100 million.
In particular, their defense is bad.
Yeah.
Bad.
They're not very good.
I do think they still pitch well for the most part.
But look at what they're getting out of Rodon.
I understand.
They're paying him over $30 million a year. He is a total he's not horrible.
But yes, he's not worth
he's
that
like a $10 million pitcher.
Correct. He's not worth that money. I agree with it. Orioles take 3 out of 4 from the Yankees. Now they get ready for a series in Cincinnati this weekend against the Reds. We will talk about that more coming up. And, of course, John Means will make his first start of the season this weekend as well.
And then the O's have the Battle of the Beltway Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm going down to D.C. Tuesday.
I hate the 2 games off next week. I hate it.
Yeah.
I hate when there's this 2-game series and how baseball hasn't figured out a way around that. I don't know. It should never happen that you have 2 off days in the same week. Yeah, and then you go all of 19, June with like 1 total off day the entire month. It's insanity the way that works out. All right, Stan. You were, I know, up late watching basketball last night.
Yeah, I caught the last quarter and a half of that game. That was a real, as my old friend, the late Paul Baker, would say, that was a taffy pull. Whew. I mean, it was like just back and forth, and
that series was phenomenal, and I could not be more excited about Minnesota-Denver starting tomorrow night. I think that
is the series.
To me, that might be the NBA Finals. Now, that all being said, we got a lot of basketball to talk about because joining us this morning, one of the godfathers of basketball analytics, a writer turned executive turned writer again. His new book is called Hoop Atlas. It's a pleasure to welcome in Kirk Goldsberry to GCR this morning. Kirk, it's Glenn and Stan Charles here in Baltimore. It's great to chat with you. Thank you for taking the time for us.
Oh, it's good to be with you guys. I hope you're enjoying the games as much as I am.
Well,
the playoffs.
That Philly-New York series, holy smokes, man. I will tell you, and I want to get into the book, and I want to get into your role and why I'm mad at you for killing the mid-range jumper. I have all sorts of stuff I want to talk to you about. But we just mentioned, Minnesota-Denver to me is chef's kiss. And this might be because I'm a tortured Phoenix Suns fan, and so I had to watch every minute of that. But I don't think I was giving Minnesota nearly enough credit. I know the Suns were kind of offering a dog effort late, but, what they do defensively and how truly special Anthony Edwards is, I genuinely believe that, they might be the best team in basketball at this point. Am I crazy for thinking that way?
Hell no. I think they're a really good team, and I think Anthony Edwards is the emergent star of these playoffs. And frankly, Glenn and Stan, one of the coolest things about the NBA playoffs is it is a big platform for emerging superstars to take the next step. At their best, they're like, oh, my God, this guy is here. And Anthony Edwards has definitely done that so far in these playoffs. And they whooped up on Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and the Phoenix Suns. And I think you're exactly right. They really proved in that series that they are not just happy to be here. And this second-round series, I've been telling other folks, it feels more like a conference finals level of basketball series. This does not feel like a second-round series. I couldn't be more excited for it, and I have no idea who's going to win. Both of these teams could win the championship, and whoever comes out of it will be a lot of our picks to actually win the championship in a month.
Kirk, I want to pick up on what Glenn said about how Minnesota plays defense. I'm not a huge Phoenix Suns fan. I knew they'd get very little out of Bradley Beal, but they were smothered at times in that Game 4 was the only game I really watched extensively. I have not seen a team play defense like the Timberwolves in a long time.
Maybe since those Tim Duncan Spurs teams.
Yeah. I mean, it was absolutely amazing how much they smothered star players like Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. I guess there's a question in there.
Well, I'll tell you what the answer is to the question. I mean, they were the number one defense in the NBA, like the great Ravens teams of old. They just won on that side of the football, and in our case, the basketball court. And it's because it starts with rim protection, which is by far the most important chore in defensive basketball in the NBA. And they have Rudy Gobert, who deserves credit for being one of the best, if not the best rim protector in the NBA over the last 5 or 10 years. He hasn't always brought it in the playoffs, but in that Phoenix series he did. And then on the perimeter, there's a young man named Jaden McDaniels, who is arguably the best perimeter defender in the world right now. And he makes people have to really work hard on the perimeter. People like Kevin Durant, Devin Booker. Not many guys can slow those dudes down. Jaden McDaniels is one that can. And then, of course, Anthony Edwards is no slouch on defense either. So Mike Conley, Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Rudy Gobert, all very impactful, smart defenders. And then Chris Finch, the head coach, has put together a really good scheme to make it all sort of cohesive. But ultimately, guys, this is the best defense in the NBA. It's been there all season. And oftentimes it's that simple. Defense wins championships. And so they could win it all with a sort of Raven-style template of defense.
There was, and I'm sure Stan has thought about, there was a sequence in that Game 4 where the Suns did everything right and moved the ball around, made every extra
and
pass.
They just couldn't
I thought Minnesota had 7 defenders on the floor.
Right, it felt like that.
I've never seen anything.
Or some of the defenders had 3 arms.
Right.
They were very long.
It was just so incredible. Kirk Goldsberry is with us here on GCR. All right, Hoop Atlas. So you've written so much about analytics and the way the game has changed. Tell me about, when I dive into Hoop Atlas, what it is that I'm getting about the transformation of the modern NBA.
Yeah, I think anybody who loves basketball has witnessed something remarkable over the last 25 years, which is the NBA turning inside out. And it's been a drastic metamorphosis, guys. And with this Hoop Atlas book, I've tried to map out how that happened, and maybe more important, who did it. And so I've got a bunch of essays that start with Michael Jordan. I argue that he invented the modern NBA with his jump shooting prowess in the last three-peat, through Allen Iverson, through the corner three in San Antonio. We talk about Stephen Curry. Obviously, you can't have this conversation without Stephen Curry. He is probably the longest and one of the best chapters, in my opinion. And then back to the big men. The big men in the 2020s have sort of reasserted their dominance on the sport, but in a unique way. And we really look at how the hyper-skilled, hyper-athletic centers like Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, and in the future now it sure looks like Victor Wembanyama are taking the NBA into a new direction where centers are kings again. I'll give you one stat. There has not been a decade since the 1970s where centers have won more than 4 MVPs. If Jokic wins this year, we're already there in the 2020s. So we're back to the future. And sort of the book, guys, is my love letter to this incredible metamorphosis in the NBA over the last 25 years since Michael was dominating in Chicago.
Kirk, let me ask you a question. I go back, I'm a little older than you, and I'm way older than Glenn. I was a ball boy with the Baltimore Bullets in 1966 when they hired a rookie coach named Mike Farmer, who lasted all of 7 games before Buddy Jeanette came in to coach for 30. He was the GM of the team, then Gene Shue, and then the next 2 years they got Unseld and Monroe. I'm an old-timer. Is there still a place in the game, college or pro, for 2-point shooters?
100%. They just have to be very close to the basketball hoop or incredibly efficient mid-range shooters. So one of the things the analytics era has really brought is an awareness that even good mid-range jump shooters are much less efficient than average 3-point shooters. Like it or not, the numbers are pretty clear. So some of the shots that I grew up watching, those Jordan mid-range jumpers, Larry Bird shooting long twos, those are pretty much eliminated from the game. Heck, even many of Dirk's shots have been eliminated from the game. So the best 2-point scorers in the league now are players who can thrive in the paint. Giannis Antetokounmpo is the leading 2-point scorer in the game. And it's slashing drives, overpowering people at the rim, where you can find the best shots in the game are still in the 2-point area. They're just very close to the rim. Other than that, nerds like me point to numbers that obviously suggest that 3-point shooting is a much more efficient option, love it or hate it.
So I know Hoop Atlas is about the growth of the NBA, the evolution of the NBA. You used to be a huge college basketball fan, and I got to tell you, I love Kevin Willard as a coach. But the team he had this year, if you have a team that can't, I guess in the NBA it's not possible you'd have a team.
No, it never happened in the NBA,
right? 19.
Yeah.
I mean, he had several games this year. I don't want to get too off track, but it was like, wouldn't it make more sense to try and shoot 2-pointers because you can't hit 3-pointers?
100%, and this happened most sort of famously in the NBA conference finals between Houston and Golden State a handful of years ago, where the Houston Rockets, who were shooting the most threes in the NBA, missed 27 straight threes in the biggest game of the year. And a lot of people are like, guys, it's not working. Go to something else.
Go to the basket.
And they didn't have that something else. And I do think it's a fair criticism for teams to become overly reliant on the 3-point shot. If you're having one of those nightmare shooting nights, what's your plan B? Just get something in the hoop. And that's where sort of the lack of a mid-range player or a post player, I think, is most visible and annoying to old school fans. And tactically, it's unfortunate. And that's where the value of somebody like Kevin Durant or Anthony Edwards, who can create their own offense anywhere on the court, becomes really valuable to teams. And you'll notice one thing about the NBA champions is whoever it is usually has somebody, whether it's Jokic last year, Giannis, who can go get a bucket inside the arc if the jump shots aren't falling.
Just another minute or two here with Kirk Goldsberry. The book, again, is Hoop Atlas. We're going to link it up on our Twitter account, at Glenn Clark Radio. Kirk, I wonder, because it feels like in some instances what we're talking about is like the best path now to success in the NBA is to have a unicorn, right? That like Nikola Jokic is a unicorn. In his way, Steph Curry, because he's just the greatest shooter that we've ever seen, is a unicorn. Besides have a unicorn, is there a best path to building a great team in the NBA at this point?
I mean, the facts are the facts. I think something like 95% of NBA champions have had one of the top 5 players in the league. It is, whether you call him a unicorn, whether you call him George Mikan, whether you call him, Bill Russell, the history of the NBA is clear that it's a star-driven league. And I think, there's still a place for team building. I think the best example where this is happening at a very high level right now is in New York, where they've built a really great group of dudes that love each other. There's not a top 5 player on that roster, but they're the 2nd seed in the Eastern Conference. They just beat a team with the top 5 player and an MVP in Joel Embiid. So you can still see that. But ultimately, I think they run into a good team with a better set of talent. The best path to an NBA championship is, do you have one of those 5 dudes or not? That's really the question. And in the book, honestly, it's lined with a lot of examples of great teams that have some of the best players in the world. And guys, one of the coolest things about the NBA's best players, they don't just win championships. They change the game. And this metamorphosis that we're talking about in the NBA and in Hoop Atlas is a lot about the guys that have done just that. Has changed the sport forever.
At Kirk Goldsberry on Twitter is how you follow him. Kirk, I know you got more of these to do.
Read. Yeah. Sounds like
Thank you for taking the time for us this morning.
Thank you, Glenn and Stan. Enjoy the rest of your day.
It's Kirk Goldsberry with us here on GCR. Appreciate him taking the time. Stan, I first of all, I want to remind everybody that now in Harbor Point, Atman's Deli has a new location, and it's everything you love about the original Atman's, plus
a bar.
That's correct. Full bar for hanging out, watching games.
A bar.
That's right. And everything you loved about the original Atman's, which of course still exists, but they just now have multiple locations. And the one in Harbor Point, it could not be better. So get over, enjoy the delicious deli sandwiches, the corned beef piled high. Get there for breakfast with the hand-rolled bagels, the soups, the desserts, the hot dogs. It's all there at Atman's Deli in Harbor Point. Plus
a bar.
AtmansDeli.com for daily specials. Before we grab a break here real quick, I just want to duck back in because we got...
By the way, I checked with them. They do not need an interpreter at the new Atman's.
Real shame for you. I'm sorry to let you. I'm sorry. That's
really not going well. Yes.
The Grayson Rodriguez thing.
Yes.
A lot of people think this was less necessity, more convenience. Are you in that group of thinking?
My gut tells me if they didn't have Means and Bradish coming back within 3 days of each other, that Grayson may have, they may have pushed him back a couple days, but this was convenient because they probably really are planning on being in the playoffs
100%.
And making a long run. And you got to chop his innings a little bit a couple times. And I think it made perfect sense. I hope it's nothing more serious than he just woke up a little sore, mentioned it to somebody, and they said, "Oh,
how about that?
Really?
Right.
That might be convenient."
And the point, to your point, I would say I think that's a good idea if that's the case. I have no issue with that whatsoever. If this is, hey, we didn't need to do this, but we chose to do this because, as you bring up, they were going to have to do something, skip some starts, something along those lines this season. So with Cole Irvin and Dean Kramer both pitching the way they've been pitching recently, this is as good a time as any. At some point during the year, they're probably not all going to be pitching this way, or they're not all going to be healthy. So don't do it then. Do it now, where you've got 5 starters that you feel like you can count on at the moment, and work through that. Are you kicking the can down the road? Yeah, you are. Like, you're going to have to make a decision at some point. You're not going to be able. Maybe we mentioned there's only one off day in June. Maybe in June you can try a six-man rotation.
A modified 6-man rotation. Yeah,
like Corbin Burns is the guy that starts every 5th day, and then everybody else kind of work around that.
That's what I mean. Corbin Burns, you're not going to have him backed up unless he comes to you and says, "I need a blow here." My big takeaway this week. This reminded me of the way Earl Weaver used to manage. And it was more that it was in his DNA, and I wonder if Brandon Hyde is expanding his DNA a little bit. I wrote a pretty nasty piece about the bullpen, and I called them the other 3. And it was Yohan Ramirez, Michael Baumann, and Jake Webb. I wanted them, all three of them, gone. I said, we got three guys here that don't belong here. Out of necessity, Brandon Hyde did what Earl Weaver never would do, which was he never would bury anybody. If somebody was on his 25-man roster, damn it, he was going to play and he was going to be used. And I wonder sometimes if a Jake Webb, and I kind of wanted to ask Brandon this after the game yesterday, but I know the reporters there are on deadline to get their stories, and it's more a before the game ask is, did Jake Webb pitch up to your expectations earlier in the year? This week he knew he was important, and you didn't duck him. You actually brought him in, and he raised his game.
No question.
Because I wonder sometimes when a guy is buried, is it that their performance sucks, or they're just sitting out there?
Like, when I come in, it doesn't matter.
I'm not gonna be used in the game. It's a close game.
It's a chicken and the egg type of question, right?
It really is.
Jake Webb was great this week, but to your point, without Craig Kimbrell available, the Orioles
they had to be creative.
They needed something, and they got it out of Jake Webb. Yeah. Now they also brought they got him up in the bullpen like 3 times yesterday before he finally came in.
It was fascinating to me where Brandon. I asked him the question after Tuesday's game. I said, "You had Kimbrell up. No, it was Wednesday's game. The game we lost, he was up. I said, was that just up to see how he feels getting up, or were you playing? He basically said if we'd taken the lead, I was going to go with him.
Okay.
I kind of wonder what that's about, though. I question the rightness of that. I would have just as soon he come in the top of the 9th, trailing 2-0.
If you're going to use him,
if you're going to use him to see whether you can use him the next day or 2 days later, or there's still some lingering effects.
That's a great point. Why be up 5-4 tonight and find out he still can't throw anything besides his fastball?
Yeah,
that's a great point. I will absolutely agree with that. Yeah. And maybe his answer would be, well, it's still only a 2-run game. But like again, if you're going to use him in a 1-run game where you're leading,
why not find out in the game you're trailing?
Right.
Just as much. Have him up fine if you want to put him in a game that you get ahead with 3 in the 8th. But what if he disastrously sort of imploded?
And then he needs an IL stint.
Yeah.
Let's not find that out on Friday night.
Losing 2, splitting the series with the Yankees.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying.
I think that's a very relevant thought.
Yeah.
Yohan Ramirez did not survive the week. When is Tyler Wells? It's
no. They don't have any idea when he's going to be ready. But Brandon addressed that before the game.
Okay.
Yesterday. I'd say it could be a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's not like another 10 days. He hasn't picked up a ball. He actually tossed a little on Tuesday.
Okay.
On Wednesday.
Okay.
But nothing yet on Wednesday.
That's the next thing that you think could help your bullpen is the return of Tyler Wells.
I think right now I've done a total about-face, and I think the next thing that helps your bullpen is putting Webb into games that mean something.
Well, that's
a little
fair,
bit more
right?
often.
That's fair based on how he pitched this week. That could be part of the.
And you probably have Suarez now at the back of your bullpen.
That's going to be interesting to me too, right? Because do they commit to that with him as a specialist versus, hey, we haven't really had a long man all season,
right.
So Suarez is stretched out. He fits the role of a guy that could be the long man. But to your point with his stuff, if you can get some buy-in from him.
It really gets intriguing tonight if Irvin gives you another good start where you're really starting to feel comfortable that he's a member of the rotation. This rotation's got 7 and sometimes 8 guys, right?
Well, I think Wells is.
No, I don't include Wells as a starter.
Okay.
You got Rodriguez, Bradish, Rodriguez, Bradish, Burns, Kramer, Means, Irvin. And
you're including Suarez in the conversation?
Okay. In other words, you've got 7 potential starters.
Yeah. All right, Stan the Fan is here. Is John here? Do we? Oh, okay. That's the part. It's cool. We'll take a break. When we come back in, John Eisenberg is going to join us. Yeah, well, you'll scoot this way. John will hop right next to you. John Eisenberg is here. He, of course, is one of our favorites, longtime Baltimore sports writer, and now he's got a completely different project called The Bird Tapes, and he'll tell us about it next, right here on GCR. All right. I promise that when we come back in.
Hartford Community College will host the National Junior College Athletic Association's 2024 Men's Lacrosse National Championship and Women's Lacrosse Invitational on May 11th and 12th at Hartford Sports Complex, 401 Thomas Run Road in Bel Air, Maryland. The semifinals on May 11th include the Women's Invitational, with the Women's North A representative playing the Mid-Atlantic B representative at 10 a.m., and the Women's North B representative facing off against the Mid-Atlantic A representative at 12:30 p.m. For the men's championship, the number 1 seed will play the lowest remaining seed in the quarterfinal round at 3:30 p.m. The men's number 2 seed will face off against the highest remaining seed at 6 p.m. May 12th is reserved for the national championship games at noon for the women and 4 p.m. for the men. Tickets are $20 each day at hartfordevents.com or at the gate if available.
The ultimate fan experience awaits you at Sports and Social Maryland. See how we're raising the sports bar with our massive 100-foot media wall featuring 40 HD TVs and a 47-foot big screen. Bet on your favorite teams and this year's biggest events at the FanDuel Sportsbook while enjoying your favorite beers and cocktails, plus our delicious takes on bar food classics. Visit Sports and Social at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland at Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
There is a place where tradition, family, and community gather, where the aspirations of talented young competitors takes root, and where the crossroads of history, culture, and renewal come together. This spring, experience America's newest and most innovative ballpark, Meritus Park in Hagerstown, Maryland, home of the Atlantic League Flying Boxcars. Plan your getaway today. You're welcome in Hagerstown, Maryland. Visit Hagerstown.com.
Hungry? With 7 locations throughout Maryland, Glory Days Grill is always right around the corner. They have wings, burgers, salads, sandwiches, and drinks to satisfy everyone, as well as tons of televisions and sound delivered right to your phone. Glory Days is the best place to watch football or whatever your favorite sport is. While you're there, be sure to check out Goose Flight's Lager, named in honor of legendary Raven Tony Goose Siragusa. $2 of every can is donated to the Goose Flights Foundation. Glory Days Grill. Great food, good sports.
Oh, honey, we better stop for gas soon. Let's pull into that Royal Farms.
Ugh, gas is so expensive.
Nope, it'll be cheaper than you think.
Why's that?
I signed up for Rofo Pay on the Royal Farms app. Now we save 15 cents per gallon at all Royal Farms.
Wow, that'll save us a ton of money. I love you more every day.
Well, then don't get a speeding ticket this trip, okay?
Sign up for Rofo Rewards and upgrade to Rofo Pay and save 15 cents a gallon on gas for a limited time. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
The Toyota Tacoma comes in a range of models and trim lines, so you can choose the perfect Tacoma to reflect your unique personality and driving habits. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Tacomas from your local Toyota dealer today.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
What company has the expertise to make your home healthier by purifying your air and killing all viruses, allergens, and bacteria? A.J. Michaels, Heating and Air Conditioning in Baltimore and Annapolis. AJMichaels.com.
Coming back in here with Glenn and the other guy, Garrett, whatever his name is. You know who they are.
All right, back in here on GCR as we continue along on a Friday edition of the program. Of course, Stan the Fan Charles in studio with us every Friday. And, I saw our next guest come in, and I said to myself, oh, you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of when I used to work with his son, because Wick Eisenberg used to be a part of this company when he was at County Sports Zone. A reminder that County Sports Zone is always the place for you to get the latest in high school sports. CountySports.zone. It's all brought to you by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. John Eisenberg is in studio with us this morning. John, it's always great to see you, sir. Thanks for stopping by to hang out with us.
Well, thanks for having me. It's always good to be here.
John, I saw you tease a couple months ago on social media. You said, I got a new project, and it's not a book. And I said, well, what? I thought that was all that John did anymore, was just write book after book after book. And as you know, I read book after book after book that you've written. This is something completely different. The bird tapes. Why? How? What? Give me all of the rundown of how this came about.
Well, this is in lieu of my next book, at least for now. And it's something that's been in the back of my head for years. It's something I have been sitting on and wondering what to do with, and I'm finally doing something about it. And it is related to a book. I mean, 25 years ago, I wrote a book about the Orioles.
From 33rd Street to Camden Yards, an oral history of the Baltimore Orioles.
Yes, and I know I've discussed it with both of you guys on various shows and everything, and it's been out there. I've heard from Oriole fans for years about that book. I went around the country interviewing everyone who'd ever done anything for the Orioles to that point. It's basically through about 2000. I collected about 90 interviews with people, wrote the book. It's been out there for years. I kept the tapes of these interviews. They were on little micro cassettes, little plastic micro cassettes, pre-digital. And I put them in a shoebox in my closet. And I had other things to do. I had jobs. I wrote for The Sun. I wrote for Ravens.com. I wrote books. I had other stuff going on. I didn't
occasionally wrote for Pressbox.
Wrote for Pressbox, right. Art Schleister and other stories. And I just did nothing with these tapes, and I knew they were there, and I thought, well, what do I do with these? It was always in the back of my head. It's with everybody. I mean, all the Hall of Famers, many key contributors going back to the 50s. I had the history of the Orioles in a shoebox. And suddenly, last fall, I just opened the box, and I went, you are a bum. You basically, you are lazy. A lot of these guys have passed away.
God, you sound just like my wife.
Yeah, right. You need to do something with this. So I don't have a book project going, and I thought, it's time to can I get these tapes digitized? Well, the answer was yes. It turned out. So I've gotten them digitized, and how am I going to roll them out? I finally just figured out a way to do it on Substack, which is a media platform. So I am just have created an Orioles history project at Substack, birdtapes.substack.com. And I'm going to roll these interviews out, vintage interviews. I've already put up, I started with Brooks Robinson. I had 2 hours with him. I did Ernie Harwell, their first play-by-play guy in the 50s. Yep. Interviewed him. I've done...
Of course, became the legendary Tigers broadcaster.
Yes. Talked to him about Baltimore baseball in the 1950s. He was unbelievable. I had just put up this week Paul Blair, and last week I put up Earl Weaver. Flew down to Florida and interviewed Earl at his golf club, and he asked me how much I was going to pay him.
Sounds about right.
Earl, not a dime. And he's like,
How much time did you get with Earl?
I got
considering the payment.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it was over an hour.
Okay.
Over an hour. I'm just finishing up. Being posted on Monday is Frank Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
I interviewed him at an Arizona Fall League game when he was president of the Fall League in 1999 in the press box. So I have all this stuff, and I'm just going to put it out there I've done some writing too, new writing on Orioles history and different things, and it's just an Orioles history project. That's it's built around these tapes, but other things.
Being an old codger, I'm not aware of Substack. Is that something somebody can go to? Do we get to access it free, or is there a charge?
Good question.
That,
There's two levels. It is a subscriber platform.
Okay.
And the subscriber, the interviews, and I mean, some stuff's for free, some stuff is $6 a month.
Okay.
And you can also do it for a year if you want to do that. It's a month off if you do a year. And the interviews are behind the paywall, although you get a free trial, and so you can hear everything. Eventually paid. Yeah, there's costs associated with this. Not going to lie.
I figure there would be. There's a lot of time put into it.
Yeah.
Just for the listener out there, what would it cost to go in and listen to several interviews?
Eventually $6 a month.
Okay.
That's the thing, and the response has been great. I mean, people seem to you know, it's the world we live in, right? I mean,
Yep.
I'm doing my share of more than $6 a month, I have to be honest, at various things, right? Aren't we all? So anyway, I didn't know what the reaction would be.
Yep.
I put this out, and I thought it was kind of cool to have these interviews and listen to this stuff. I mean, I have some decisions to make. I mean, I have a fantastic 2-hour interview with the late Mike Flanagan. I have 2 hours with Peter Angelos. I have, I mean, you almost can't top every general manager from the Hank Peters, Frank Cashin, Lee McPhail. I flew up to New York and interviewed Lee McPhail, who's in the Hall of Fame.
Harry
Dalton, and who tells his life story. It's basically the life story of the Orioles because that was his life until he left. So it's real Orioles history in the voices of the people that lived it.
Yeah.
And for better or worse, I'm going to put it out there because I do think the people are interested, and the team being good again. Yeah. I think it might have been hard to put this out during the rebuild when they were 78 games under 500.
Yeah, we don't need more Orioles content right now.
Right,
we don't need that at the moment.
I don't know. Maybe we would have wanted to be
just something that was pleasant. Yeah, tell me something pleasant. Yeah.
So that's what sort of when last fall when I looked at it, I thought, the team, there's so much interest now. They're coming off a 100-win season, and the team is great. And so there it is, as you know, Stan. I mean, there's a continuum here. It isn't like Orioles history stopped. There is a past, and what are they calling it? The next chapter?
Yeah.
Well, these are the prior chapters.
Yeah.
It is a continuum.
Not bad, John. That's a good pitch. That's a good pitch.
And so here it is. So I'll put it out there, and it's a little shocking, honestly, to hear myself interviewing these guys 25 years ago. There's already some moments where I'm like, no, don't.
You're a better man than I would never want to go back and listen to myself interview anyone. I don't want to hear what we did on the show today tomorrow.
I know.
I don't want to do that.
I interviewed Paul Blair, and he was a baseball coach at Coppin, and I'm listening to myself, and I thought, you sound like you're 12. What is up with that? So anyway, it's interesting.
Birdtapes.substack.com again is the website for the Bird Tapes. John Eisenberg is in studio with us. John, I feel like it's important because a lot of times people will try to capitalize on, someone being in the news, and they'll say, "Hey, here's this interview I had with this person 15 years ago," and you're like, "Right, but you're interviewing them about the game that was coming up that week." No one cares about that today. No one has any interest in hearing about that today. This is very different because, as you point out, it was for a history project. These are far more evergreen conversations.
Oh, well, the Earl Weaver one, just for an example, I said, well, tell me about St. Louis. He's from St. Louis, and he, he starts and goes, well, believe it or not, I actually was a prospect, because he never played the major leagues, a huge thing in hindsight to him and to his needlers like Jim Palmer. And he goes through how he didn't make it as a player and how he got to be a manager, the Jim McLaughlin, there's all these names that are just total rock star, in the history of the Orioles. There's key guys
and they're all developmental people.
People. Yeah. I just put up a piece today about Jim Russo, who I'm sure you knew, Stan.
Sure. Inspector Russo.
Yeah, he was a scout, and I just put up a piece today about his part in the Frank Robinson trade, which I really didn't know that much about. I was reading up on it. So there's all this, to me, interesting history, and hopefully provide some context to what's going on today.
I have the not only do I get to see Stan every Friday, right, but we have Jim Henneman here too at Press Box, and
by the way, now
yes,
the Press Box named
right, unbelievably well deserved, and there's no one better. So I have the good fortune of having a lot of Orioles history surrounding me, or guys that can remind me. Stan will sit here and play Immaculate Grid on every Friday, and we'll name names that I'll say, Stan, he'll bring up a name, and I'll say, now, did he play for the Tigers? I'll say, Stan, I've never heard of that person. Why are you asking me that question? I have no idea who that is. But as part of this project, I have all of this access to Orioles history. I feel, I don't know if obligation is the right word, but I feel a responsibility to pass this along so that the young people on Twitter will have more of an understanding of Orioles history.
It is. I mean, I have an entire family of Oriole fans.
Yep.
And yeah, I sort of floated all this by them, and son-in-law, son, daughter, and their friends, everybody. I said, well, what do you think about this? And they were like, this is cool. You should do this. And people don't know it, and I think that. Yeah, I mean it's more than just commenting on the games on Reddit. It's hopefully provides a little context.
It's a fascinating repurpose of the content you have. Instead, you could have probably gone to publishers and said, "Why don't I write a prequel to From 33rd Street to Camden Yards and Beyond or something like that?"
Yeah,
and repurposed it that way. But doing it this way hits an audience that probably isn't reading books as much as it used to.
It's the world we live in now, and certainly I know that. I mean, I was on the digital media side of the Ravens for close to a decade. Worked with a lot of young, very smart people, and we're sort of, I just had my feet and sat in a lot of meetings. Was in that world. And so, it's sort of that I think helped me to understand this. This is what you do now. You can take a break. It's the Rocketman, the Black Quarterbacks book that I wrote that came out last year. That was 3 years in the making, a ton of work, and it's done great. I'm really happy with it, but it's just a whole different thing. 3 years, no one sees it, then you put it out. And this is just different. It's the way people are consuming history or in this day and age, a podcast and different things. So I thought I was teed up. I was able to do it.
I was actually going to make the comparison to Brockmire, just probably not quite as vulgar, right? Like that's sort of the same kind. Tell some stories. Like that's. Although I say that. I haven't heard the Earl Weaver interview yet. Maybe it is quite as vulgar as Brock.
No. There's a new book coming out on Earl. Did you know that?
I do know that, and as a matter of fact, I am in touch through this project with the author.
Yeah, and what his name?
John Miller.
John Miller, yeah.
And I will tell you, I don't know John. He is supporting the project.
I've met him,
He has some really good material on Earl.
The Earl stuff is going to blow people away.
It is.
The
uncle.
The connected uncle.
He's got
not connected.
Yeah. No, he's not saying that about Earl, but this was a guy that influenced him greatly.
Yeah.
And I wrote a piece last week about Earl and the index cards and the sort of the beginning of data. And he responded to me with some stuff out of his book about where Earl was doing it in the minor leagues as early as the early 60s. And using lefty-righty stuff and how hitters were doing against pitchers. And I said, this stuff is awesome. You have a great book coming. I'm looking forward to reading it. So, yeah, he's, one way or another, I'll try to help him out some. It's pretty cool.
John, you know who the guy doing the research was? Bob Brown and Earl came up with the index cards. Do you know who the first person who did the research was? Gene Fugit.
No.
Gene Fugit was an intern with the Orioles under Bob Brown.
And he
worked on assembling the data.
No.
Yeah.
Right.
At least that's what Gene says.
Wow.
And I see no reason not to believe him.
Gene Fugit, who you might also know now as Adam Jones' father-in-law.
Yeah.
That's
didn't he do something else
I
in
think
between
he might have been an athlete of some sort. I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Great guy.
I'm not really sure.
Great guy.
John, what's something, now I'm gonna give us a tease. What's something that as you were listening to everything yourself, that maybe never made a book, that as you were listening to this, you said, how did I leave that on the cutting room floor? How did this story not make the cut? What's something that we are going to learn when we subscribe to the Bird Tapes that really blew you away, that, again, you did the interview, but somehow you'd never shared it before?
I don't think I put enough in my book of sort of, and this is true really throughout a lot of sports writing, me included, sort of the racial end of it and the experience of the black athlete. Paul Blair who did not. He told me the big picture with Paul was he had a good experience in Baltimore racially, but he's denied service at a restaurant when he got here. And then 2 years later, he wins the World Series, and they say, "Will you come in and have a party?" And he's like, "No, I will not be doing that." And Frank Robinson, a story, the interview that's coming out Monday, this is somewhat known. I don't know if it's known or not, but Frank said, I get traded to Baltimore, and I'm at spring training, and my wife's up in Baltimore getting this place to live. And she said she had no problems as long as they thought she was Mrs. Brooks Robinson. And, once she was Mrs. Frank Robinson, it was no, no, and no. And, that's kind of intense stuff. And there's a fair amount of it.
Did you ever get time with Jerry Huffberger, the former the early owner?
No, Jerry had passed away by the time I did this. Cal Ripken Sr. had passed away. Mark Belanger had passed away. I mean, I missed a lot of guys. But key guys.
You know whose grandson works for the team? Tyler Huffberger.
Yes.
Works for the Orioles.
It's really cool. It's and Stan's told me a little bit more about what he's doing. It's a really cool tie-in to bring it all together.
Fantastic.
A piece of Orioles history that perhaps the average fan does not realize how important they were. This aspect was to the Oriole way, the dominance of the era between 66 and 83.
The Oriole way, what's important to understand, and I think this is coming out in this project, is it was all put in place before 1966.
Yeah.
I think one of the first guys I put under the microscope a little bit was Paul Richards, who created basically, they put him totally in charge of the team in 1955. He was unchecked. Ultimately, he took advantage of them, and they had to bring in Lee McPhail to sort of run the team, and Paul ultimately left. And they lost some scouts because Paul wanted to be in charge of everything. But he was really good about saying, we're all going to play the same way at every level. And they started a minor league camp in Thomasville, Georgia, where the minor leaguers went every year. 300 guys showed up. Who was it that told me? Yeah, one year I was uniform number 257. and so
I've never seen that before.
So it was, I can't remember who it was, but Earl went down there. All these guys, Cal Sr., they were all at this military barracks, basically, in Thomasville, Georgia. They would get them out there every day and teach them how to do cutoff plays, how to run the wheel play, on a bunt, everything.
Paul was like an early day Buck Showalter.
He was.
Ways.
That's it.
Totally wanted to get control of every aspect.
Very, very good comparison, Stan.
Yep.
That is who he was, maybe even more so.
Yep.
Ernie Harwell, who I loved the interview with Ernie Harwell, had some hilarious stories about Paul taking advantage of basically everyone around him. You would go out. He played a lot of golf at these clubs, and that he would always try not to pay and all this stuff. But he had a huge impact on put in place. First off, he created a scouting department that was great, just as good as it gets. All these sort of unsung heroes, and they were just signing tons of guys. This is before there was a draft. They made no major league draft until 1965, so you could sign whoever you wanted. I mean, they signed Brooks Robinson, Boog Powell, tons of pitchers.
Couple people I wonder if you talked to. Steve Dalkowski.
I did talk to Steve Dalkowski because he's another one that comes up, and everyone has a story about Steve Dalkowski. And I did interview him. I mean, Steve is such a tragic story. And by the time I got to him, he was he'd lived a long, tough life.
Major alcoholic.
Problem. His sister had gone because he was homeless for a time in California, and it's a true American tragedy. His sister found him and brought him back to New Britain, Connecticut. Got him straightened out. So he was a little shaky on his memory things, but I did interview him.
Boog Powell told me the funniest.
So Steve Dalkowski, for those that don't know, like the legend was that Steve Dalkowski could throw the ball like
harder than anybody.
Yeah, like legitimately harder than Nolan Ryan, harder than Mason Miller. Like that,
Yeah.
There were stories he could throw the ball upwards of 110 miles an hour. I mean, like the folklore that surrounds Steve Dalkowski is beyond almost any player in the history of baseball. It's Sid Finch, right?
It's Sid Finch, a little lefty with glasses.
Yeah.
Boog Powell told me the funniest story, one of the funniest stories I've ever heard. First of all, I didn't know the Orioles at one time trained in Arizona.
At the very beginning.
Right. And Boog and him go, I forget what city would it have been in, Tucson or they went like 30 or 40 miles
Yuma.
to some bar.
Yeah.
Boog and Dalkowski. Dalkowski gets totally shit-faced. They drive back. Can you imagine back then, 60 years ago? They drive back. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. Boog Powell has Dalkowski. He's the guy's
carrying him, right?
He's carrying him.
Fireman carry.
Here comes. So it must be 61, maybe 59.
Yeah.
Here comes. It's 3:30 in the morning. Here comes Cal Sr. and Earl. Now, first of all, they're blitzed too.
Yeah.
Boog didn't want them to see Dalkowski. He throws them in a thorn
bushes.
bush, in a rose bush. And he talks to them, and they go, and then he collects them, and he's got pulled thorns off them. And he said he pitched the next day, a day game.
That's a movie. That's a movie.
Oh, Dalkowski, I'll tell you, that's a book. I did consider it.
Really?
Yeah, because...
Well, and of course, Bull Durham, there's like connections there because Ron Shelton, right? Am I correct about that? Yeah.
I wrote about him some when I was at the Baltimore Sun, and, so just you're right. I mean, the mythology with him, I don't know if it's all true, but it's really good stories.
How about Jim Gentile? Did you go out to Oklahoma and talk to him?
Yeah. I did. I drove to I was in Dallas, my hometown.
Oklahoma? Was it Enid?
It was, I can't remember where it was, but I drove and sat in his living room with Jim Gentile, first baseman, and he told me a story that I have that interview. It will go up. I'm getting that one digitized right now. And the famous moment, one of the early great moments in Oriole history is when he hit a grand slam in the first inning and the second inning
in Minnesota.
In Minnesota. And he told me, it was a great day, I'll tell you the story, and it begins the night before, and I really didn't sleep. He had been out all night.
Yep.
And it's a day game in Minnesota. He has 8 RBIs by the top of the second.
Yep.
So then you got to go out every night, right?
Yeah. So he was a character.
I think that was the first game of a twilight doubleheader, actually, because my neighbor, Leon Cohn on Gist Avenue, who used to listen to every game on his porch, Gentile hit a grand slam home run. And so I was 9, 10 years old, and I used to like to listen to the games with him. And I went over there, and the bases were loaded again. And he hits a second grand slam home run. It was amazing.
Incredible.
Absolutely
incredible.
Amazing.
Yeah.
All right, Stan, we're gonna take a pause here. When we come back in, I want to talk more about the connective tissue to the Orioles today.
Okay.
And then I also want to touch on, I had a suggestion for you to go back and add a new chapter to Rocket Man. I don't know if you ever saw it, but I made a suggestion on Twitter, and I want to talk about it with you as well. John Eisenberg is in studio with us. Stan, you've got another show coming up a little bit later on today, correct?
Yes, I am doing our podcast with Terry Hazeltine, drawing a crowd.
I meant Eric Garfield.
Oh, Eric Garfield. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. Eric Garfield and I. Yesterday was so hectic with the Oriole Day game. We were having people over for dinner. We're doing something about 3:15 today on the Florida Complex League and some of the prospects the Orioles have there.
Very good. You can find that Facebook.com/PressBoxSports. And if you miss it live, YouTube.com. It's quite all right. Stay on YouTube.com/PressBoxOnline or PressBoxOnline.com/video. John Eisenberg is here in studio with us. Birdtapes.substack.com to find out more about the Bird Tapes. We continue along a Friday edition of Glenn Clark Radio.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
Discover one of Baltimore's hidden gems at Guilford Hall Brewery. Enjoy dinner in our spacious brew pub, sip a signature cocktail in our outdoor, dog-friendly beer garden, or take a tour of our brewery. Discover your new favorite local craft beer. From crisp lagers to hoppy ales, there's something for everyone to enjoy. Pair your brew with delicious appetizers and entrees. There are options for the whole family, but you have to try our fan-favorite giant pretzel. Guilford Hall Brewery, where every sip is a celebration. Visit us online at guilfordhall.com.
Make the most out of every day in your Toyota RAV4. Available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today.
The drug scene in Maryland is changing. Fentanyl and xylazine are being added to street drugs, and you may not even know it. Xylazine is not even intended for humans, and fentanyl is an opioid 50 times stronger than heroin, and contributed to over 80% of overdose deaths in our state. Anyone who uses drugs, even occasionally, is at risk of overdose. To learn more, visit stopoverdose.maryland.gov or call or text 988.
Oh, honey, we better stop for gas soon. Let's pull into that Royal Farms.
Ugh, gas is so expensive.
Nope, it'll be cheaper than you think.
Why's that?
I signed up for Rofo Pay on the Royal Farms app. Now we save 15 cents per gallon at all Royal Farms.
Wow, that'll save us a ton of money. I love you more every day.
Well, then, don't get a speeding ticket this trip, okay?
Sign up for Rofo Rewards and upgrade to Rofo Pay and save 15 cents a gallon on gas for a limited time. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
Craving that classic New York deli experience? Look no further than the new Atman's Deli in Baltimore's Harbor Point. Corned beef piled high, hand-rolled bagels, and something different. A bar! Atman's has food and drink specials every day. Now open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Dine in, grab takeout, or hang out at the bar for the next O's game. Atman's Deli, an authentic taste of Baltimore tradition since 1915. Find us at Harbor Point or visit atmansdeli.com.
What company has the expertise to make your home healthier by purifying your air and killing all viruses, allergens, and bacteria? A.J. Michaels, Heating and Air Conditioning in Baltimore and Annapolis. AJMichaels.com.
Hungry? With 7 locations throughout Maryland, Glory Days Grill is always right around the corner. They have wings, burgers, salads, sandwiches, and drinks to satisfy everyone, as well as tons of televisions and sound delivered right to your phone. Glory Days is the best place to watch football or whatever your favorite sport is. While you're there, be sure to check out Goose Flights Lager, named in honor of legendary Raven Tony Goose Siragusa. $2 of every can is donated to the Goose Flights Foundation. Glory Days Grill. Great food, good sports.
One of the things that's definitely wrong with this country is that this dude still has a job somehow, some way. Glenn Clark.
Back in here on GCR. John Eisenberg is in studio with us. It's Friday, so of course Stan the Fan Charles is here as well. Coming up later on this hour, we're going to preview the Kentucky Derby with our buddy Randy Moss from NBC. And also coming up a little bit later on, we'll preview the Reds. Chris Welsh, the former pitcher and Reds broadcaster, will join us ahead of that weekend
I just
series.
want to thank you for setting this up for a Friday. Because this is really fascinating.
It's funny because I wanted to do this anyway, and Stan brought it up with me, and so I'm glad that we were able to do this on a Friday to have John Eisenberg in studio with us, with both of us, which is a lot of fun. You know, Stan, I have a great affinity for John, not only because of his career, but also could not have been. We were desk neighbors at the Baltimore Ravens for a little bit, and I was young, not qualified, all those things. John could not have been kinder to me and more helpful at that point with learning how to be a real, a
grown-up.
Correct. Yeah. So he's always meant a lot to me as
well.
So
I was a grown-up?
It was close enough to help me. Close enough to help me in the process.
Breaking news.
I needed someone that was closer to the status of a grown-up at that point in my life. You know who I was hanging around in my career those days.
Okay.
I needed more of a grown-up in my world.
Mentor.
Yes,
a mentor.
More of that type of figure. John, Stan and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Cal Ripken being involved in this new ownership group means nothing really, right? Tangibly, he's a figurehead, right? Like it doesn't. But
I've heard something lately
that he's
much more in I heard from somebody fairly reliable.
I wouldn't, knowing him, that wouldn't surprise me that he wouldn't want to do it without having more of that. But I say it to say, even if he's not decision making, I still think it's valuable. I still think it means something.
I agree with you.
And it's hard to explain this. It speaks to, some people would call it our Napoleonic complex, whatever, about Baltimore, that we just want to, like, tell me Cal Ripken's there. Tell me, when he was alive, Brooks Robinson is involved. We just want to know that these athletes that we love and that have been such a part of our connective tissue of our lives are welcome, are involved, are helpful, are all of those things. And maybe it's the exact same way. Stan and I talked about this when Brooks passed. Maybe that is how it is with Stan Musial in St. Louis. Maybe that is these relationships. I don't know because I haven't spent as much time in other markets. There were no baseball heroes in Arizona when I was working out there. But I don't know how to explain it about this city, this market, this team. There is a feeling to me that is particularly unique about these people and wanting them to be a part of it.
Well, I think it is meaningful, and one of the reasons is I would dare you to find another, athletic personality figure in a city that has the same situation. You have a guy in Cal Jr. whose dad was in the organization. My Bird Tapes interview with Cal, which is probably will be within a month. It was 1999. He was still playing. And we talked some about the streak and all the history. He was still in the, just marinating in it. But the best stuff, and what we talked about mostly, was his history with the team, going back to he is a historian because his dad was dragging him all across America.
North Dakota. That's the irony. They lived in Aberdeen, North Dakota, and Aberdeen, Maryland.
All over the place. And he has so many stories about early Orioles and all the guys, and because his dad was just in the heart of it. And so can you find someone who is an 8-year-old, is basically a Baltimore Oriole already, and then he grows up and he plays for the team, and not only does he play for the team, he's an incredible player for the team, and then a historic player for the team, and he goes into the Hall of Fame, and now he's an owner? Okay, show me somewhere else where there's that story.
That's a great point.
It's one of one.
It's interesting, and I had a fractured relationship with Peter Angelos, because I was deigned to be very critical of his ownership.
Oh well, he wouldn't talk to me.
But one of the biggest failings of his organization, of his tenure, was how he kind of ran Brooks off, didn't work with Brooks. Really no relationship with Frank or Eddie, and virtually no relationship. And Cal would publicly say the right things, Mr. Angelos, and Mr. Angelos would support some venture initiatives out at the Ironbirds, but he didn't really make them feel part of it. And it's really been interesting to watch Cal the last 2-3 weeks. He's at the games.
Yep.
He's got the best seats in the house, the front row down there. And it does make you feel good. And I think John, to his credit, when he took over, one of the first things he did was bring Brooks and Eddie back into the fold.
It's such a small thing, but it's just something that
It's a layup.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just, and Brooks in particular, what a layup. And actually it was in the Bird Tapes interview.
Yeah.
Brooks talking, because that's right when it was happening.
Brooks
1990.
Brooks was hurt.
He was like, he tells the whole story in that interview. He says, Angelos, he says, we got along great, and he sent me send me a job. Send me, what would you want to do? And send it to him, and he sent it to him, and Peter said, that looks great and everything, but they'd never heard from him.
Never heard.
Ever.
Yeah.
And so that was good. And the Frank Robinson interview, there's they just similar, of course, and he was actually in baseball operations.
Yeah, sure. But
they pretty much closed him out of there. So it's just, so with Cal, it is interesting. Someone asked me that. He says, how do you think he's influencing? Because people thought for years, if Cal got back into the Orioles, it would be on the baseball side, because he had such a knowledge and was such a wise player, and it would really be interesting. And obviously he's not. you're not going to tell Mike Elias what to do.
Yeah, I think what he'll do is be informative for David Rubenstein.
100%. And consulting. And that was when I talked to Cal, he said, like, I'm a sounding board. That's what I'm here to be. Which, if that's all it is, I would say, yes. Like, why would you not? To your point, John, who knows the Orioles and Baltimore better than Cal Ripken? Why would you not possibly want that asset to be a part of what it is that you're trying to do?
It's really pretty much underlines exactly what I'm doing with the bird tapes, which is the connective tissue you talk about. As I said earlier, it is a continuum. You go back to what happened in the other names, Paul Richards, and you got Cal Ripken, an embodiment of the fact that it connects. And so, because he connects it.
Did you get a chance to talk to some of the earlier blacks in the organization?
I did.
Like Joe Durham?
Yes.
And did you talk to him about the thing that Stedman used to write about Paul Richards, when they were trying to get him to work on not bailing out or something? They actually roped.
They tied him up.
They tied him up, and they yanked to, they treated him basically like an animal.
They did.
Yeah.
They did. Yes, I did talk to Joe about that, who used to be in the press box all the time.
All the time.
He's actually the first black Oriole to hit a home run. I did it in 1954, so a figure of history. And, that was not a shining moment. I mean, they literally tied him up. I don't think see, that's a case where 25 years later, I would ask the questions a little differently.
Yeah.
He just kind of laughed about it. But it wasn't his favorite memory. But, yeah, I did. I talked to – now, I don't have on tape some guys. I did interview some guys on the phone, and I just didn't have the mechanism
to tape a phone
to
call.
tape.
Yeah.
On Johnson
he was the first black to play for the Orioles.
Yeah.
Pitcher. 0.3% on the grid.
Oh, look at you. Look at you.
Connie Johnson. Let's see. There was Bob Boyd.
Yep.
The
rope.
The rope was the first baseman. And so,
He was a bus driver after his career.
Yeah, he was. Hey, speaking of that, I went and interviewed Steve Barber, who is, the Orioles' first 20-game winner. And he was driving a bus in Las Vegas. He as happy as he was driving a school bus.
That's cool.
Jackie Brandt was driving something equivalent to UPS out in Nebraska or something.
Yeah, the center fielder before Paul Blair.
Yeah.
Jackie Brandt. I interviewed him in his daughter's house somewhere in Lutherville.
Yep.
I don't know how I made that connection, but it was an interesting journey. And
how about Baylor? Did you get Baylor?
I did not get Don Baylor. That one was unfortunate. I didn't get Merv Rettenmund.
No Elrod either.
Oh, I got Elrod but he was in the clubhouse. He was fantastic. Hey, I even got, and he couldn't stand me. Eddie Murray.
Stan doesn't know anything about that. Stan can't fathom. Eddie Murray doesn't like you.
Eddie Murray doesn't.
That's weird.
He wouldn't talk to me. But so it's how I got Angelos too. Eddie, I went out to, he was a coach in the Arizona Fall League, and I went out there and interviewed Frank, and someone got to Eddie and said, you ought to talk to this guy. Mm-hmm. And he's talking to everybody. And so I did. And so I have an hour on tape of Eddie saying, I don't really like you, and I don't really want to do this. But I did get him going a little bit. That was good.
He might have thought you were me.
Yeah.
But did you talk to Lucchino, who just passed away?
Lucchino is in there. Yeah. Yes, Larry Lucchino is in there, who I got along with, and it's certainly
we all did.
Very, very pivotal guy. Peter Angelos was the last fella I talked to for this book. He, of course, denied my interview request for years when I was at the Sun. He wouldn't talk to the Sun people. And so, fine, whatever. He's not the first or the last. But he... so I interviewed Joe Foss because I had all this tape. I had a lot of stuff in the 90s, all this tape of people basically criticizing him for various things. And so I went to Joe Foss, who was team president, and I said, he's going to get skewered in this book, and I want to hit it down the middle here.
Right. You're not trying to come on one side or the other.
No, I want his side in here, and he's not going to do it. So Joe said, I'll talk to you. I'll give his side. And so he did, which was great.
Joe was good at that.
Very good. So I got it from Joe. And then 2 weeks later, I get a call from the Angelos office saying, Mr. Angelos will speak to you. Can you go to lunch on X? I can't remember. And when we went to I think Joe went to him and said, you're going to look like a schmuck.
Yeah.
And not Peter Schmuck.
Right.
He said, he said, he's talked to everyone but you. And so we met for lunch in Little Italy.
Couldn't have been nicer, right?
Couldn't have been nicer. And you know what? There was a bottle of wine shared. And he took it all on. He was sort of self-deprecating. He was charming. And, kind of laughed about what he was getting ripped for. And he was fine. And when it all ended and the tape recorder was off, I said, you should do this. You should do this more.
He could have had the media eating out of his hand.
He could have.
Yeah.
I said, you're good at this. And he just looked at me and he laughed and he smiled. And, of course, then the next time I called for the Sun, it was like, he will not speak to you.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes.
So, okay.
Yeah, that is the nature of it. John Eisenberg in studio again. birdtapes.substack.com. You can go subscribe and get all of this great content. I just want to give you a couple of questions. We bring up Peter Angelos, and I mentioned the new ownership group. I feel like within this city there is almost, it's almost celebratory, right? Like it doesn't even matter who the new ownership group is. It's a new ownership group. I wonder, knowing what you know and having covered as many owners as you have, do you feel like they should be given such a blank slate? Should there be more skepticism? Hey, these are still baseball owners that we're talking about. These are still wealthy people that have a tendency to look after themselves first.
It's all relative. You always have to have that approach, I think, a little bit. In this case, though, however, I am very I feel like I understand the parade, and it needed to happen. I think it's totally fair for people just to say, thank goodness, and this is awesome. This is great. And, yes, there's going to be times coming down the line where they're not going to pay for somebody, and, this is inevitable. I mean,
that's the way it works.
Yeah. So it will happen. Hopefully it happens within a framework of the understanding that, A, they are willing to put the money that's needed to have a winning team in, and B, there's an understanding of what needs to happen in baseball. The owner understands that he doesn't know. He should not be making the decisions. I think that had a lot to do with the sort of the fractured relationship with Peter Angelos back in the 90s, when there was a lot of reporting about him sitting, telling Johnny O's to play Leo Gomez at third base, and stuff like that. It's like, what? This should never happen. Plus his
he basically thumbed his nose at Pat Gillick.
Thumbed his nose at people who knew baseball 10 times better.
Yep.
And listen, the Baltimore Sun sent me to the Dominican Republic to write about what was going on down there. There was nothing going on down there for the Orioles. Didn't really believe in the research and development that you have to pay. So I think decisions, good or bad, the ones you might boo them for, will be more easily swallowed if you understand that all the right boxes are being checked, because they were not being checked.
To me,
and what do you need a starting pitcher for? He only
plays every 5 days.
Yeah.
Yes. So, so to answer your question, yes, that there's going to be moments coming and everything, but the unbridled joy, I get it entirely. I feel it, and I feel like it's totally fair.
Okay, I think that I would agree with everything that you just said, John. I think that we are simpatico in that way. Like you're right. There's going to be times where you're going to be angry. You're always going to be angry at the guy that owns the baseball team, because the team's not going to win every game. That's the way that it works.
Yeah,
they can't. But to the point, yes, it was time. Beyond probably time at that point.
Yes.
I suggested, I am so flummoxed by the treatment of Justin Fields.
Yeah.
In the NFL. Justin Fields is a backup quarterback. I can't wrap my mind around that. The team's throwing themselves at J.J. McCarthy, throwing themselves at Bo Nix, when Justin Fields was available for a song to the point where he's a backup quarterback in the NFL. And I don't think Justin Fields is Lamar Jackson, but I think he's in the conversation.
Yeah, do we know that?
That's fair. This to me reads as sort of the next, like, I remember when you and I talked about Rocket Men, and I said, you didn't give it a Hollywood ending. Like, it didn't wrap up nicely, like, hey, Patrick Mahomes won the Super Bowl, all's good now.
Right.
You made it abundantly clear with the Lamar Jackson chapter, like, not everything is good now. It's better than it was, perhaps, but there are still inherent problems. Do you feel the thing that the Justin Fields thing, maybe I blame you because I read the book and I have such inherent skepticism now. It borderlines gross to me that this offseason played out where Justin Fields it's just accepted. Yeah, he's just a backup quarterback. That's what he is in the NFL.
Interesting. Yeah. Because he did break some ground, but the Bears did by drafting him in the first place, because it was kind of shocking. They were the ones that they could have traded up. They didn't trade up for Mahomes. They traded up for Mitch Trubisky. That was the moment. That was the moment.
Nailed it.
That was the moment where whole generations of people said, "Aha! It's not over." And the Bears, but it kind of surprised me when they did that. So, I don't know. I do feel I don't know that Race is involved in Pittsburgh. I'm glad they traded for him.
Then their starter's a black quarterback.
The starter's a black quarterback. And I think Mike Tomlin is saying this guy, I don't know that he knows what he's getting with Russell Wilson. I actually think he's going to get pretty good with Russell. He's going to have good production from Russell Wilson.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't know what will happen to Justin, because Russell will play. Russell Wilson what was it? His numbers last year? Did you look at them?
Yeah, but did you see the other thing where none of the throws were beyond 5 yards down the field?
Yeah. Okay.
I've thought the other thing. I thought that it's not going to be long before Justin Fields is the quarterback.
I tell you,
Pittsburgh.
I'm rooting for that.
Yeah,
I'm rooting for that because I do think Tomlin
has.
Well,
the part of me that still roots for the Ravens is not rooting for that.
Right. Well, definitely. I'm removing that from the conversation.
I get it.
I would like to see Justin Fields on the field. When it was really going bad with Lamar and the contract and everything, and where did somebody say, hey, get Justin Fields in here? He was available. I was like, not the worst idea I've ever heard. I think he's pretty good. So you have to hope that his opportunity will come somewhere, but that's what I wrote my book about. The opportunity doesn't necessarily come. So you're absolutely right.
There's always another opportunity for a Ryan Tannehill. There's always another opportunity for – that's the part – I can't shake this.
Yeah.
And how many teams needed quarterbacks? Somebody's going to start Derek Carr again. Somebody's going to say, we'll run it back out there with Derek Carr. Justin Fields was available for nothing. Yeah. And the league sort of said,
we'll take Bo Nix.
We're good.
Yeah,
we'll
correct.
take Bo Nix.
Yeah, J.J. McCarthy's our answer. That's our answer. We think we'll just go out and try that and see how that works.
One thing I realize more and more is, you go back to the year Lamar was drafted, and all those quarterbacks were going to be quote-unquote saviors. And it's every year. The first-round quarterback. What's really amazing is how many of them don't work out.
I was listening to the
Josh Rosen.
I was listening to the NFL Network the other day. What's the guy in the afternoon? Pat Kerwin.
Oh yeah, sure.
Jim Miller. After the draft, he was saying, he goes, "There's 6 of them in the first round." He goes, 3 of them will be total busts.
Total busts.
And
I don't think it'll be Caleb Williams. I don't think he'll be a bust. But he could be.
Sure.
Justin Fields is a guy who's been on the field and done some interesting
performed.
things. Yeah, has done some interesting things.
I don't think he's a completed project by any stretch of the imagination, but what you've seen to me is more than enough that if I needed a starting quarterback and it was for nothing, it would be worth me to say, let's figure out if this guy can be the guy.
You've watched a lot of football, John, and I know you have, Glenn. have either of you ever seen a quarterback treated the way that Russell Wilson was when he was laid out by Sean Payton? Did you see that?
Oh, yeah,
That was really just beyond the pale.
It was pretty incredible. There's all sorts of politics at work there and personalities at work there, and a coach saying, coming in with a year after they've given $1 trillion and said, you're our future. It's like, no, you're not the savior. I'm the savior. and so that's what's going on there. The general manager who traded for him is still there, which almost never happens. So it's a weird situation. It was. I mean, it's okay in this day and age. If you're going to move on from a guy in a contract, it does get ugly.
Yeah.
And I think Russell Wilson, I don't know him well, but I think he brings some stuff on. He's got a little bit of a diva in him.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson, he's in my book Rocket Man, has had a huge career. And a bigger career than I think people realize. Unbelievable player as a young player.
He's a Hall of Famer.
I think he's a Hall of Famer. Yeah. And so the fact that he's gone to the Pittsburgh Steelers, I don't think it's good for the Ravens. I think and if he doesn't work out, they got Justin Fields. The Steelers have been treading water here for a little while. And those two moves, I think, beating the Ravens, by the way, on the field. But how many in a row?
Helps when you don't catch a football. It helps when suddenly everyone decides not to catch the ball on the same day.
But I think that this quarterback play has been a significant issue, and I think they're going to be better with those guys.
We always end every conversation with you the exact same way. So what's next?
This is what right now. Bird Tapes, I'm just getting going. On this, and I've got dozens of interviews that I'm gonna put up, and I'm gonna swim in the pool of Oriole history for a little while, have some fun with it, and see where it goes. I don't know. It seems to be the right thing. Feels right for me right now.
Birdtapes.substack.com is where you can check it out. John Eisenberg, I always love doing this, man. I really appreciate you coming in and hanging out with us today.
Good stuff.
Appreciate you having me on to talk about this. Really do. Appreciate it a lot.
John Eisenberg, birdtapes.substack.com. Still a lot to do this morning. We're going to preview the Kentucky Derby coming up next with Randy Moss right here on GCR.
Craving that classic New York deli experience? Look no further than the new Atman's Deli in Baltimore's Harbor Point. Corned beef piled high, hand-rolled bagels, and something different. A bar! Atman's has food and drink specials every day. Now open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Dine in, grab takeout, or hang out at the bar for the next O's game. Atman's Deli, an authentic taste of Baltimore tradition since 1915. Find us at Harbor Point or visit atmansdeli.com.
What company makes your home more energy efficient, purifies your air, kills all viruses, and qualifies you for $6,000 in rebates? A.J. Michaels Heating and Air Conditioning in Baltimore and Annapolis at ajmichaels.com.
Whether your focus is luxury and comfort, convenience and technologically advanced connectivity, or sporty performance and aggressive styling, we've got the perfect Highlander for you. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Highlanders from your local Toyota dealer today.
The ultimate fan experience awaits you at Sports and Social Maryland. See how we're raising the sports bar with our massive 100-foot media wall featuring 40 HD TVs and a 47-foot big screen. Bet on your favorite teams and this year's biggest events at the FanDuel Sportsbook while enjoying your favorite beers and cocktails, plus our delicious takes on bar food classics. Visit Sports and Social at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland at Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Discover one of Baltimore's hidden gems at Guilford Hall Brewery. Enjoy dinner in our spacious brew pub, sip a signature cocktail in our outdoor dog-friendly beer garden, or take a tour of our brewery. Discover your new favorite local craft beer. From crisp lagers to hoppy ales, there's something for everyone to enjoy. Pair your brew with delicious appetizers and entrees. There are options for the whole family, but you have to try our fan favorite giant pretzel. Guilford Hall Brewery, where every sip is a celebration. Visit us online at guilfordhall.com.
The latest edition of Press Box is available now. On the cover, Luke Jackson profiles Grayson Rodriguez, talking to people who have been part of his path as the Orioles hope he'll become their next homegrown ace. Also inside, we remember legendary Maryland basketball coach Lefty Driesell with stories from legends like Roy Williams and Bobby Cremins about what it was like to go up against the old left-hander. Press Box is available at over 500 locations around Baltimore, including 60 Royal Farm stores. You can also find the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
The drug scene in Maryland is changing. Fentanyl and xylazine are being added to street drugs, and you may not even know it. Xylazine is not even intended for humans, and fentanyl is an opioid 50 times stronger than heroin and contributed to over 80% of overdose deaths in our state. Anyone who uses drugs, even occasionally, is at risk of overdose. To learn more, visit stopoverdose.maryland.gov or call or text 988.
The Ed Block Courage Award Foundation has been working in partnership with the NFL for 46 years to support abused, neglected, and at-risk youth across the country, partnering each team with a children's facility or program that supports the well-being of those in need. Annually, one player from each team is selected by their peers to receive the Courage Award for their inspiration on and off the field. Learn more about how the Ed Block Courage Award Foundation makes a difference, and be sure to check out their latest podcast and web series episodes at edblock.org.
Contrary to what some people believe, I actually like this guy when he sleeps. Glenn Clark, talking sports.
All right, back in here on GCR as we continue on a Friday edition of the program. Always remember, Sports and Social is the best place to watch all of the playoff action. Every game, the atmosphere is electric, and this is a huge weekend because not only the playoffs and baseball, pretty big horse race, and on top of that, fight night tomorrow night. Both Canelo in action, the UFC card. I don't know if there are still spots left. You want to get on the website right now to try to reserve your table. If you want to reserve one of those blue reclining chairs inside Sports and Social at Live Casino and Hotel, just stop by the FanDuel Sportsbook. But tomorrow is going to be a wild day inside Sports and Social at Live Casino and Hotel, Maryland. Speaking of that horse race, we had to do this a little bit earlier on, but an opportunity to catch up with one of our favorites and try to find out a little bit more about the field with the great Randy Moss from NBC right here on GCR. Well, it must be that time of year. The Kentucky Derby is tomorrow. Coverage all day on NBC and USA. And if it's Kentucky Derby season, that means it's time for us to catch up with one of our favorites. He, of course, is Mr. Randy Moss, and he's back with us now here on GCR. Randy, it's Glenn and Stan in Baltimore. It's great to chat as always. Thank you for taking the time for us.
Hey, guys, no problem. It's a little wet here right now in Louisville. Hopefully it'll be a little bit
I was going to say, what's the story for tomorrow?
Well, I mean, it's going to be it's a very wet day today on Oaks Day. The Kentucky Oaks probably is going to be run on a sloppy racetrack. The weather forecast is kind of changing by the hour, seemingly. It's looking a little bit better for tomorrow. So I think chances are by the time we get to the Kentucky Derby, the track might be okay, but you don't know.
Okay. All right. That'll be a storyline. I guess let me start, Randy. How good is Sierra Leone? Does this horse truly deserve to be the kind of commanding favorite that it looks to be?
Well, it's a two-horse race on paper, right? Fierceness and Sierra Leone. Fierceness was almost a 14-length winner of the Florida Derby. It was by far the fastest of any of the preps. And right now, in the early betting, Fierceness is 8-5.
Wow! I didn't see.
He's a really solid favorite. And surprisingly, Sierra Leone has gone up from 7-2, 3-1 in the expected, the program line and all that to 6-1.
Oh.
Right now, there's a lot of betting left to be done. Obviously, most of the betting on the Derby is done on Saturday, so we'll see if those odds kind of level out a little bit. But I was thinking that Fierceness would be a reasonably solid pick, but at 6-1, Sierra Leone would be there'd be a whole lot of value there. Put it that way.
Tell me, Randy, the difference between a John Velasquez on top of Fierceness and a Tyler Gaffione. Is there any difference there?
No. As a matter of fact, I tell people all the time, that when you get to the Kentucky Derby, when you get to the Breeders' or the Preakness, when you get to the Breeders' Cup in the fall, don't pay much attention to who's riding who, because all the jockeys at that point, right, the very best jockeys in the United States, a lot of the best jockeys in the world, they're the cream of the crop, and it's extremely minute, any differences between jockey A, jockey B, jockey C, jockey D. So just focus on the horses and the way the horses have been running, and don't worry that much about the jockeys. They're all good.
Having said that, Randy, I noticed Just a Touch at 13-1, the second horse trained by Brad Cox, has a TBD on jockey. Any significance there?
Well, there was originally back when they were first deciding on all the jockey assignments and all that, he was TBD, but all the jockey assignments have now been firmed up. And to show you that I practice what I preach in terms of not paying much attention to who's riding who, I can't tell you who's riding Just a Touch, because it doesn't really matter to me, right? I mean, he'll get a good ride.
All right, fair enough.
One way or the other.
It mattered to me at one point when it was Calvin Burrell in Kentucky. I don't know. I thought that he could ride anything. I thought he could ride anything to a win, as he, of course, obviously proved in Mind That Bird. So outside of that, I'm with you. Randy Moss with us here on GCR. Randy, is this race a case of it's going to require something goofy happening for one of those two horses to not win this race? They're that good, or are the horses throughout the field strong enough that it doesn't really require something goofy happening, like someone getting stuck at the rail in a 20-horse race in order for someone else to end up winning?
Well, this is always the X factor nowadays in the modern era for the Kentucky Derby. Horses are less experienced today when they run in the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness Stakes and the Belmont than ever before. They're being trained that way. They're being trained to race less and less often. And you don't know a lot of times what the upper limit of the horse's potential is. They haven't run enough. They haven't gotten enough experience to reach that potential. Owners don't know. Trainers don't know. Jockeys don't know. For like Just a Touch, for example, right? He's only had 3 lifetime starts. The expectation is that he's going to improve with experience. That may be true. It may not be true. And if he does improve, nobody knows how much he can improve. Way back in the day, when horses came into the Kentucky Derby and they'd run, 14, 15, 16 times, all that improvement that comes from experience had already been baked into their past performances, and you kind of knew what you were going to get. Nowadays, you don't really know, right? Even the people closest to the horses don't know.
I'm just curious. You got my attention when you talked about Fierceness winning the Florida Derby by 14 lengths. He's also got the 17 post position. Is that a problem for him?
If back in the day, a decade, 15 years ago, we went through a period of time where the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness, the trainers, the owners, the jockeys got to pick their own post position. You remember that?
Yep.
It was a real strategic deal. If the Connections of Fierceness had a chance to pick their post position, they would have wanted 16, 17, 18, even 19. The horse, his running style, and outside post is absolutely perfect. He's the kind of horse that shows speed. There is some speed inside of him. John Velasquez gives him a chance to just take it nice and easy going into the first turn and sort of size up who's to his inside, how fast they're trying to go. It's an absolute perfect post position for Fierceness.
By the way, I have confirmed it is Florent Giroux on Just a Touch.
There you go.
So
Thank
there you go. We got
I
that
can't
going.
bet. I can't bet.
Oh, you're out now. You're out now.
Yeah.
You got an issue with Florent. Randy Moss with us here on GCR as we're getting ready for the Derby tomorrow. All right, so we always get to this point of the conversation. Tell me how I'm making money. Like how?
Yeah,
can
give us a triple.
How do I build a ticket that's a moneymaker for me this weekend?
Well, the real money-making potential in the Kentucky Derby always seems to revolve around the trifecta and the superfecta.
Yep.
Because if you can get a horse that's 20-1 or higher, that can, sneak in there third or fourth, and you put the favorites on top of him and all that, you can get a surprisingly high payoff, right? And if that horse just happens to win instead of running third or fourth, then it's just all the better. So, you want to play fierceness, you want to play Sierra Leone, you want to give just a touch his due in your trifectas and supers. But there's also a few horses like Honor Marie, right? Honor Marie is going to be 20-1 thereabouts. He loves Churchill Downs. He's training exceptionally well. He's got an excellent chance. The 1.25 miles is going to be no problem. So he's going to be running late. That's the kind of horse that can come from behind and get up for third or fourth. Just Steel is going to be probably 30-1. You're talking about Wayne Lucas there. If Just Steel, who was second in the Arkansas Derby, can run that same race back again, he's right there fighting it out for third or fourth at a big price. So I think that's kind of the key nowadays in making money on the Derby.
Can I ask you? I have this weird what are we utterly dismissing the fact that Dornoch beat Sierra Leone a couple months back? Like, is that do we think that was a fluke because of the track, or I don't know. For some reason, I'm very enticed to play Dornoch tomorrow because of that result.
It could be famous last words, but a lot of us are sort of dismissing Dornoch's win in the Remsen over Sierra Leone. And the reason why is that the racetrack that day at Aqueduct last fall was very, very strongly favoring horses running next to the rail on the inside part of the racetrack. And they sent Dornoch to the lead early in that race so he could make sure he got the rail. Sierra Leone was on the outside. He was at a disadvantage, and he rolled up to Dornoch like he was going to blow by him. But the rail was so fast that day at Aqueduct that Dornoch just kept running and managed to come back again and beat Sierra Leone right at the wire. Subsequently, they ran against each other in the Bluegrass Stakes, and Sierra Leone beat Dornoch fairly decisively. Dornoch will probably go to the early lead again like he did in the Remsen from post position number 1, but it's going to be a tall order for him to lead wire to wire.
All right. Thanks for crushing my dreams, Randy. Really, I thought I was already counting my money. Thanks a lot.
Hey, and this is just opinion now. It's one guy's opinion, right?
Hey, Randy, last question from me. In light of the Shohei Ohtani and the interpreter, I noticed that Forever Young has Japanese handlers. A jockey, Sakai, and the trainer, Yashiro Yahagi. Do they have interpreters?
And do they need one because Stan's offering his services?
I'm going back to study Japanese. I'm trying to get a new job, new career.
They need interpreters. They have interpreters, but yes, that's
have they been checked for betting?
Right, you gotta see. You never know what they're up to these days. Randy Moss. Go ahead.
Yeah. This is a gambling sport.
Yes, it
is.
It's
a gambling sport.
Good with
yeah,
it here. No doubt about
they're encouraged. They're encouraged to bet.
Bet on yourself. Bet on yourself. At Randy_Moss_TV. Of course, today, Kentucky Oaks Day, coverage on USA, and tomorrow it starts on USA, then moves over to NBC for the Derby. Randy, looking forward to seeing you here in town in a couple weeks. Always appreciate you, man. Thank you for taking the time for us.
Thank you, Randy.
You're welcome. Thank you, and always looking forward to getting to Baltimore in a couple weeks. Take care.
The great Randy Moss with us here on GCR. Yeah, I don't call me a mark, but I'm going to play Dornoch somehow tomorrow because
you're a mark.
I am a mark. Thank you, Griffin. You did exactly what I asked you to do. You couldn't have nailed that any better. I am going to play Dornoch.
Always.
He does have the result. And the winner.
Where are you going to make the bet on a? Well, because you can't unless you sign up with TV.
Orioles in Cincinnati starting tonight to open up. We're going to do that. I promise. We are going to do that. That's going to happen in 1 second, but not quite yet. I have an account with First Racing.
You do have it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll end up playing through them. But even there, in order to use I believe you have to be at a track. Like they geofence it, I believe.
So you could go to Timonium.
You
have time tomorrow?
Yes. Oh yeah, 100%. I'll have time that I could swing by Timonium and get my bet in. So I will. I'm not saying that I'll do that. I might do it a different way. I might maybe do something a little more.
I don't think you're letting anybody down if you don't go there.
Yeah, I think that's the case. All right, Stan is here on a Friday edition of the program. I feel like there was something else that I wanted to cover with you, Orioles related, before we talked to Chris Welsh, and now I've already forgotten what it was. And so, Heston Kjerstad.
Yeah.
I know he got into the lineup the other day, but he hasn't played much. Have you been okay with them saying we're not taking Mountcastle out of the lineup, we're not taking this is just the way that it goes. He's the odd man out when we face righties because
it really makes you wonder, which I've wondered anyway. Remember at the end of spring training where I was correct in saying that Holliday was going to go down, but then I was wrong in who the last pitcher would be, and I was wrong on Colton Wong.
Right.
And it was Tyler Nevin for 2
Nevin,
days.
Who's killing it, by the way. Who's having a monster season.
That's the point. It was Tony Kemp, 8 days or 9 days of Tony Kemp really worth losing Tyler Nevin?
In hindsight.
And who would you rather have right now, Tyler Nevin or Ramon Urias?
Oh, well, I feel it's mean-spirited to Ramon Urias, but I hate talking about Ramon Urias. I hate it.
He's a nice guy. You can tell he's a nice guy.
And someone who I've appreciated the way he plays the game.
He's a professional.
I have appreciated that a great.
A lot of empty at-bats.
A lot of empty at-bats, and then the defensive metrics say that the Gold Glove season was a fluke. That is not the story of Ramon Urias.
And I'm not saying you'd want Nevin at third base every day.
Right.
But, right now he's playing first base, third base, left field, right field.
Yep. And has been highly productive.
4 home runs.
Yep. Well, that's my
325.
It's my Connor. I can't defend Ryan McKenna. It's fine. I guess I just realized this happened after we went off the air. You and I did
yesterday.
That's true. He did hit a home run yesterday. That's not nothing. I just can't defend Ryan McKenna, who overwhelmingly they've said he has hit lefties so little at the big leagues that we don't even really want to take Mullins out of the lineup on these days. I get it. He did hit that home run. That did happen.
Off of Carlos Rodon.
It is difficult to defend Ryan McKenna's spot on the roster, and it's made worse by, yes, but he's supposed to be the defensive specialist, and now, while it wasn't as brutal as what happened in Boston last year, that's a ball that needs to be caught on Friday night. If
the one that went over his head.
If you're playing in the 9th inning of a game for your defense.
I don't get Santander, to me, not going to cover the greatest width.
But he's not a butcher.
But he doesn't miss balls that are hit right at him.
No. I have never thought that if you did the math, and again, they could explain this to be a different way, but if you did the math of what kind of defensive upgrade someone is versus the risk of if the game continues and this person now has to be in your lineup versus this person, I don't think there's any world in which that math works out that it's favorable to put McKenna in the game over Santander.
I agree.
I think
Austin Hayes, if it's a day off for Austin Hayes, I'll put him out there any day of the week, over Santander.
That's an interesting.
Defensively.
Yep.
But I also think.
Kind of got a reminder about that yesterday with that throw from Colton Cowser. Jeez.
Yeah. I also think of Ryan McKenna also, in fairness, it's not the easiest job in the world, but that is your job to come in the 9th inning.
If you want
to
have a path
focused.
to being a Major League Baseball player, and particularly on a good baseball team, you better be able to handle that.
Yeah. I thought that ball should have been caught, too.
It absolutely should have been caught. I can't defend his roster spot. And to me, the answer was, if you got to... I'm not angry about Jackson Holliday, despite the fact that I thought he should be here on opening day. I said to you then, that to me was entirely about PPI. If it's not working, we talked about this last Friday before the move was made. I didn't think it was going to be that day.
Right.
But I said, I do think you have to reach a point
about that.
where you say, winning matters. We need to prioritize.
Winning matters over an everyday decreasing chance that he's going to get you that extra pick.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. I'm good with the decision that was made.
Yeah.
And by the way, he could still come back up in late May and be a tremendous player and be in the conversation at the end and could still be valuable.
More importantly, if he can come up and help us win games.
Fact.
That's much more important.
Fact. 1,000%.
You were right about that.
So I'm good with that part of this. I'm just not good with McKenna's side and particularly struggle with the Norby side of this. Like, that there is something valuable, that there is a right-handed bat. And I get that he's not a plus defender. I understand that, and I do know that matters to them. But they're playing Ramon Urias, who's not a plus defender anymore. I am so perplexed by why you're committed to giving at-bats to Ramon Urias instead of saying, let's take a chance on Connor Norby. Let's see.
Have you seen well, apparently they're not doing that. I wanted to ask you a question because it's something I talked to Mike Elias for a second yesterday. And I said, I got a suggestion for you. And he said, yeah, I said, we'll talk at the next homestand. He says, just grab me. I'm old enough to remember Todd Cruz, who was an sometimes erratic shortstop that moved over to third base.
Mm-hmm.
I know they're not taking Henderson and moving him to third for Jackson to play short right now. Have you seen what I see with Westberg at second base? How fantastic he is at second base.
I think there's no question.
I think the days that Mateo is going to start and Westberg is going to start, I'd like to see them experiment with Mateo at third, Westberg at second, because I think Westberg is a Gold Glove caliber second baseman. I don't think Mateo is a Gold Glove second baseman.
I certainly agree with that part of it.
And he could be a total butcher at third.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he will because he's a incredible. To me, he's a burst athlete. Just a burst. So
it's an interesting thought. I don't know how I feel about it fully. I get what you're saying about Westberg. I think he is a very good second baseman. I guess
I watch Urias right now, and I don't hate him.
No,
but
it's my least favorite conversation to have because I don't like piling on the guy. Like I didn't mind piling on Tony Kemp because he's not really an Oriole, right? Like he didn't really do anything to earn any favor. Ramon Urias has done things to earn favor, and it hurts me to be negative towards Ramon Urias.
But Jim Palmer's done great things for the Orioles as a player.
I guess that's true. I don't think I want him out there either. That's a good point. Palmer had an interesting day because he
eviscerated C.B. Buckner.
Boy, he's had a week.
Yeah.
Palmer yesterday, though, was wrong a few times. There were a couple of low pitches from Kyle Bradish yesterday that were low. That Palmer
was at the game. I didn't.
Palmer gave it a. I mean, if that's not a strike, Palmer was wrong.
I mean, I think they were closer than the little box was indicating.
Maybe, but he said at one point.
Low.
He said it brought up that's why you got to have the robots. And I'm like, Jim, if you have the robots, they're going to call that a ball. The interesting part about the robots is that I do think it actually enlarges the strike zone on average. I don't remember who we talked to. We talked to a pitcher about that. Was it Cade Povich?
It might have been.
I think that we talked to about it.
Yeah.
That the pitchers don't really want the robot balls and strikes either because on the whole it will enlarge the strike zone to, if you touch a centimeter of the plate, they are going to call it a strike when you get to robotic balls and strikes calls.
And like we were talking about with Corbin Burns, if you have a really good pitcher who realizes, I can throw a ball underneath the zone, and this umpire's going to call it, then I'm going to, gonna live there.
That's true.
From what I'm gathering now, it doesn't sound like we're ever going to get full.
So I meant that the other way. The pitchers would like the enlarged strike zone.
They would
the
like
hitters would not really.
Right,
that's
what
I meant. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
But the more I hear about the way this is going, I don't know that we're ever going to get full robotics on every pitch. I think they're much more inclined now to have a challenge
I think
system.
that's coming.
Yeah.
I absolutely think the challenge system
Where
is
a hitter,
coming.
I guess maybe it's only on the third strike. I don't know.
Yeah, because you don't really want it to be every pitch.
Well, he wouldn't have unlimited challenge.
Right.
Maybe one
per
at each at bat or
yeah,
something like that.
That might be it. All right.
Am
Today,
I able to duck out now? Because I know you're moving on to
we're going to chat with Chris Welsh.
Nah, but it's Chris
Welsh. It wasn't
Welsh.
personal, I don't think.
Well,
I don't think it was personal.
I beg to differ with you.
If you're going to be hanging around, I know that Griffin wants to do this week and the rest of baseball, so we can talk about that a little bit later on.
I was going to run.
All right, you got to go. That's fine.
No, I'm going to be back to do the Terry Hasseltine podcast. I was going to grab something to eat.
By all means, Stan the Fan, at Stan the Fan on Twitter.
I'm not trying to be a diva.
No, you're good, Stan. You're good. This afternoon, what time? 3:15?
3:15
Eric
to
Garfield.
3:30 is start time for Eric Garland and I. You can watch it on
Facebook.com/PressBoxSports.
Yep.
And then Monday, of course, you, Ross, and Luke.
and power rankings on
Absolutely.
Monday.
Stan the Fan on Twitter.
Thank you.
By the way, apparently baseball agrees with Stan. Gunnar Henderson named AL Player of the Month today. Colton Cowser named AL Rookie of the Month today.
Wow.
So
Just not watching the games, I guess.
I'm telling you, who did we talk about this with this week? Was it Bordy?
Yeah, I think it was.
We're all guilty of
Bordy.
you look at what Adley Rutschman's doing.
They're
Insane.
both doing incredible.
I'm not taking anything away from Gunnar. I'm not taking anything away from Gunnar at all. Just what Adley Rutschman, nobody's paying attention
He's
to.
doing great ever since I threatened to write the article
about Bobby
exposing how
Witt.
much better
It's
Bobby
nuts.
Witt.
It's nuts.
He has lifted his game.
It's
the last couple weeks
unbelievable
he's done
how
that.
good Adley Rutschman has been.
I'll be back in just a little while.
Stan the Fan
love
with
you
us every
guys.
Friday.
I love Griffin too.
Well, he's okay.
Yeah.
Orioles Reds this weekend in Cincinnati. Let's preview the series. Chris Welsh from Cincinnati actually had to do this a little bit earlier on. Opportunity to catch up with him right now. Orioles in Cincinnati starting tonight to open up a 3-game series with the Reds. Joining us now to tell us a little bit more about this interleague opponent. He, of course, is a Reds analyst and former pitcher. It's a pleasure for us to welcome in Chris Welsh to GCR this morning. Chris, it's Glenn. It's great to chat with you, man. Thank you so much for taking a couple of minutes for us.
Oh, you're welcome, Glenn. I'm always happy to talk baseball, especially when you have a matchup as interesting as the one that's going on in Cincinnati.
So much excitement. We were talking about this last summer. There's so much excitement about this series just because of all of the insanely good young players that litter both of these rosters. It's one of those cool things about interleague baseball these days is getting this type of matchup. And let's start with one of those, obviously. Elly De La Cruz, when he's off to 8 home runs, 18 stolen bases. I mean, could we be looking at like a 35-80 type of season for Elly De La Cruz this year?
Well, I think a lot of people are speculating ththings like that about Elly, but everybody wants to talk about him first when we talk about the Reds. And really, the way that Elly goes, the Reds will go this year. Yeah. He's extremely talented, both defensively and on the other side of the ball. He runs as well as anybody in any league, and he's an exciting player. But, I can't project where he's going to be. I mean, his home run power is incredible. He has hit a lot of opposite field home runs. But again, he's 22 years old, so you don't really know what he's going to do as you get deeper into the season. He ran out of gas last year, and I think the Reds are trying to figure out a way to keep him a little bit fresher this year.
I feel like going into the season, Chris, a lot of the story about, hey, what can the Reds do this year was going to be based on can they get some more pitching. And the Orioles this weekend are not only going to see Hunter Green tonight, but the two other guys that are pitching this weekend, Andrew Abbott and also on Sunday, Nick Lodolo, it feels like the performance so far is really encouraging to the prospects of what the Reds might be able to do if they can keep performing like this.
It's a similarity between these teams that both front offices have drafted extremely well over the last few years. They've had some pretty high round draft picks, and they made good on it. Hunter Green was taken, top of the draft a few years ago, second overall. He threw the ball as well as I've ever seen him throw it his last time out. He's made things a little simpler for him. He was a guy that always threw close to 100 miles an hour, and he would get hit. He couldn't figure out why. So he came up with a new pitch and experiment with this. But he's become a 3-pitch pitcher, and he's throwing the ball very well, commanding it on the inside part of the plate to left-handers. So that's a big thing for him. And then the Reds will run out a couple of left-handers who are really different. Andrew Abbott, product of the University of Virginia, is going to come in. He's a high fastball pitcher with a nice little breaking ball. And then Nick Lodolo is another top-round draft pick that the Reds got who specializes in kind of a sneaky fastball and a really good slider, almost like a Steve Carlton-type slider. And those three guys are very capable.
Is it fair to say that so far, and again, the Reds are over 500, but sort of right there at around 500, is it fair to say that, surprisingly, more of the issue has been that the bats haven't fully gotten going besides Elly De La Cruz, and maybe that's not what was expected. If they come around, this Reds team can be really dangerous.
Well, yes, but they're also missing, and probably will get back fairly soon, two of their best players.
Yeah, McClain.
The number one player on this ball club is Matt McClain. Yeah. Young player, but still, he's probably the most polished hitter of all other than Spencer Steer, and he's out for the year or just about the year. He hurt his shoulder in spring training, diving for a ball. And he's had surgery, and so we're not sure when he's coming back. The other is Friedel, and Friedel is a center fielder who had hurt his wrist diving for a ball early in the season, and he is not going to be back for another couple weeks. So the Reds are missing some pieces, and they're a little bit more susceptible to left-handed pitching than they are right-handed pitching. And, of course, that's what they're going to see tonight against the Orioles.
He is Chris Welsh, Reds Color Analyst. He is with us here on GCR as we're getting ready for the Orioles to play a series this weekend in Cincinnati. Chris, again, we talk about at the top, like what this weekend, this sort of, I don't know, it feels like there's a little extra juice to something like this. Is the Orioles' success sort of like the blueprint for what the Reds believe they're going to be able to accomplish this season?
Yeah, I think so. The Reds are kind of taking their own path because they drafted pitcher heavy, and they're looking for more help when it comes to offense. But I do think that these are teams that, are spending similarly the same amount of money, that their best years are ahead of them, that the window that they have as far as winning is going to last more than just 1 or 2 years. I don't think that their teams are going to go deep into the free agent market and start spending, oolahs of money, at veteran free agents. But I do know that they're exciting the fan base because 2 years ago the Reds lost 100 games.
Yeah.
Last year they lost out of the playoffs by 2 games at the very end of the season. And this year they've got their eyes on the playoffs. So I think the window for winning is really good for both these ball clubs, and that's why it's exciting.
And there's still more, much like with the Orioles, there's also still more talent coming in Cincinnati, correct?
Exactly, yeah. They've got a lot of arms down there. The next wave of position players for the Reds is probably in Double-A or in High A. So they're a couple of years off. But, the farm systems, I think Mike Elias and also Nick Kroll have done a really good job in figuring out how they're going to make their team competitive and winning in the years to come. And they drafted well and signed well. So anytime you get lucky on a guy like De La Cruz, I mean, this kid signed, he was about 5'10", 135 pounds, and now he's almost 6'6", and he's one of the best athletes in baseball. So you never really know. You need a little bit of luck, but you also need some smarts.
Yeah, it's like you have to watch whenever he's playing baseball type of scenario at this point with Elly De La Cruz.
Yeah, the Reds lead the all of baseball in stolen bases, and he's got about a third of them. So, I mean, and half of those stolen bases are steals a third. So that's the element that I think that we haven't seen in baseball in the last few years. You're going to get it with De La Cruz.
A little nervous about that. The Orioles not great about keeping runners from running, so I'm a little bit nervous about that going into the weekend, Chris. That is a bit concerning. Are they at the point where they're ready? Like, are they? I know we're still a couple of months away, but are they at the point where, hey, we'll do what it takes to back this up and make sure that we get the right pieces? And are they willing to be active moving towards July 31st?
Well, I think so. It depends where they're positioned by the July 31st. The Reds have had problems scoring runs. I mean, if you look up and down their lineup, they've got a number of guys that are still hitting in the 100s. They've got a couple of guys that are hitting in the low 200s. They don't hit home runs like the Orioles do. There's really not a ton of threats in their lineup that you worry about when you're on the pitching mound. But they're a team that kind of, slices you to death, slices and dices, gets a couple of runs here and there. And if they can win one-run ball games like they did last year, it's a team that would be right in the thick of things, and they may go for it in July because, even though you say you got a lot of good young players, you've got to seize that opportunity when it comes. There's an old saying in baseball is that you don't pick the year in which you compete. That year picks you. And I think that applies to the Reds.
With the difference being that obviously David Bell was, a very high-level player, unlike Brandon Hyde. I feel like there's a similarity there where he came in, he had to soak up a bunch of losses. How much credit? I think Brandon Hyde does not get enough credit for his role in what the Orioles have done. How much credit should David Bell get for his role in how the Reds have began to turn things around?
I think both of them need a lot of credit because both of them had to change a losing culture. When you lose 100 games like the Reds do a couple of years ago, you've got to get that whole attitude out of your system.
Yeah.
And that means creating a new way of doing things in the clubhouse. Starts in spring training, starts in the type of players that you're going to sign. It starts in how you're handling those players. And David Bell is one of these guys who's always got the back of his players. And I think Brandon Hyde's the same way. I think there's a lot of similarity between those two guys as well. Maybe not their playing careers, but certainly. And the other thing I think, Glenn, is that it takes a while to become a good baseball player. It also takes a while to become a good manager. And I think that David Bell is beginning to kind of hit his stride as to what works and what does not work.
Yeah, to your point, I use the word culture all the time. Like, I don't think a culture like this happens in spite of the manager. I just don't believe that could possibly be the case, and that's the way that I feel about Brandon Hyde, and that makes sense with David Bell. All right, it's at ThinkPitch on Twitter is how you can give him a follow. Chris Welsh, it should be a really exciting weekend between the Orioles and the Reds out in Cincinnati. Really appreciate you hopping on with us for a couple minutes this morning and getting us ready.
You're very welcome, Glenn. And I could promote one little thing, if you don't mind. I have a website about the rules of baseball. It's completely free. It's called Baseball
Hang on, you should pass it along to the umpire.
You know what? I do that. In fact, I'm in contact with umpires on a daily basis because this year has been a year that's been filled with crazy plays, rule interpretations, and so on. And we've had a lot of fun with it. But if anybody has a question about a goofy play, you're going to find those kind of answers on that site.
BaseballRulesAcademy.com, again, is where you can check it out. That's awesome. Great stuff. Chris, thank you so much for doing this morning.
All right. Thank you, Glenn. Have a great day.
This week
in the rest of
baseball.
Time to wrap up the week with This Week in the Rest of Baseball. Griffin tries to find some storylines that perhaps we missed out on this week because we were so hyper-focused on Orioles-Yankees. We did talk about the bee thing in Arizona the other day, which was an awful lot. That was an awful lot of fun. That was maybe the best thing that happened in baseball all week. All right, This Week in the Rest of Baseball is brought to you by the print issue of Press Box. Grayson Rodriguez on the cover. Great cover story from Luke Jackson. You heard Jim Palmer talking about it the other night on the broadcast.
Not wrong about that.
That part accurate, 100%. And I thought Jim, for the most part, like you could hear as Colton Cowser made the throw yesterday. He's like, "Well, that's where you miss Austin Hayes." I mean, Austin Hayes certainly makes a better throw. I don't want to pile it. Colton Cowser was his name AL Rookie of the Month today.
The thing is, he did it like earlier in the week too, where he just completely missed the cutoff.
I mean, it's just the throws are bad.
It's like he's just throwing it as hard as he possibly can.
Right.
I feel like he's in, like in
and
high
that
school.
Particularly yesterday was not necessary. Mm-hmm. I don't know why they were. I mean, maybe just because it was Cowser and they said let's test his arm. He had time.
Yeah.
He actually legitimately had time.
It felt like he was. Sorry, you're doing a read.
No, you can finish it.
I felt like in high school we would play in like showcase tournaments.
Yeah.
And there
oh,
was
you
this
just want to.
this kid we played with, and he was trying to throw to third, and he just launched it from right field and went into the stands.
Go get this print issue of Press Box right now at your neighborhood Royal Farms, any of the hundreds of locations where you find Press Box around town, or read it all at PressBoxOnline.com.
So this was debuted last weekend. Have you heard about the home run sausage?
Yeah, have I heard about it? Did you hear the whole rant from Rocco Baldelli?
Yes.
I played it on the radio the other night. It's joyful.
Yes, it is incredible. Apparently, Ryan Jeffers came up with it, and
it's a summer sausage.
It is a summer sausage. Yeah. So Rocco Baldelli was worried about it's getting hot out. This thing hasn't been refrigerated.
That thing is going to be open, but summer sausage doesn't get refrigerated.
Correct.
Summer sausage
it's a Minnesota thing apparently. You can
get summer sausages anywhere.
Oh, okay.
Summer sausage is just the type of thing that like somebody gives you as a gift at Christmas because they need to give you something. And they're like, here's this, right? And then it just sort of sits around and you never, like one day you look, you're like, oh, right, the summer sausage. Room temperature is fine, but to his point, the heat could be a bit much for a summer sausage. It's currently in a plastic, and it's a big old summer sausage. It's giant. It's in a plastic container. And the Twins started employing it when they went on that 8-game win streak.
They're still
winning. Still winning? I thought
10 games in a row now.
10-game win streak.
They're still active.
So you can't get rid of it.
Cannot.
You can't put it away. You're red hot. But it's funny the way he said it was like, look, I'm not really an adult, but I guess I'm more of an adult than some of the guys involved in this process. I'm just a little worried about what happens when the plastic, inevitably as that thing gets passed around, that plastic wrapping is going to give at some point. And when it does, somebody is going to touch something very gross. There might be some contamination involved.
Do they want to win or
the
not?
home run sausage. Dude, he said we're getting a lot of production, and when you're winning, they ain't getting rid of it. That's for sure.
The stats are they scored 67 runs in their first 20 games. The Twins did, so going 7-13, scoring 67 runs. in 20 games. Over the past 10, this 10-game winning streak, they have scored 76 runs in these 10 games.
So, that's crazy, man.
Yes, it is. The Orioles shut out the Yankees on Monday night. The Yankees have been shut out 5 times this season, which is the second most in baseball.
How about that?
They've also scored 15 runs, though, twice in this season as well, which is tied for the most times that the team scored 15 runs. So a very
kind of weird
dynamic lineup, I guess.
Kind of weird.
On Tuesday, Kyle Gibson and Jack Flaherty faced off.
Yeah, I saw that. And it was a pitcher's duel.
It was a pitcher's duel. They both were incredible.
Flaherty was like flirting with a no-hitter for a little while.
It was. He struck out the first 7 batters to start the game.
No, he wasn't flirting with a no-hitter. He was flirting with a 20 strikeout game.
Right.
That's what he was flirting with.
And he tied the American League record for 7 strikeouts to start a game. Jack Flaherty and Kyle Gibson faced off, and very
weird.
Much a pitcher's
very weird.
Also on Tuesday,
I like Kyle Gibson. Like, I don't have negative. He wasn't brilliant, but you knew what you were getting in Kyle Gibson. He gave you what you expected, and part of that was we all wanted to aim higher in what the Orioles were looking for in a pitcher. But you got what you were going to get from Kyle Gibson. Flaherty will forever be a disappointment. Like, Flaherty will be we're never going to look back on that and feel okay or right about it. There won't be any positive feelings towards Jack Flaherty because the Orioles knew then. And look, again, we all were on board when they made the trade. We all said, hey, we get it. And it just did not work.
So the Brewers had Tyler Black, their number 4 prospect. He debuted on Tuesday, and if you saw in the stands, they were like interviewing his dad, Rod Black, in the stands while he got one of his second hit of the game. And it was a really cool moment. It was a very cool moment. However, that was kind of overshadowed because at the end of this game was the Abner Uribe and Jose Suri got into a benches clearing.
What
brawl.
Was that? I didn't even see. What was it?
John Boy did an excellent breakdown, of course. But yes, it was like so. Suri pimped. I think he pimped a home run earlier in the game. I forget.
Is it Suri, by the way? I've definitely called him Jose Siri.
It might be Siri. I've heard Suri as Siri.
Well, you don't know. That's the answer. All right, fair.
Could be either.
Doesn't help me in any way, Griffin.
And so Abner Uribe got it, or maybe he was talking to the catcher. I forget how it started. But anyway, this was late in the game now, or later in the game, and Uribe got him to ground out, and he had to cover first, and so he stood on first for an extra minute while Suri came back, had to walk back to the dugout, and gave him a little it almost looked like a nut tap, but it looked like he just kind of tapped him on the legs a little bit as he walked by, and Suri kept looking at him, and then they just decided they wanted to square up. And if you watch the breakdown, they did not land any. They were very much swinging a lot, but no one landed anything.
Right.
And it was a lot of little.
Yeah. It was a baseball fight, more or less.
So yes, that also happened on Tuesday. Also, Tuesday was the beekeeper thing. We did cover that. So that was that is probably the story of the week. On Wednesday, Stuart Fairchild, center fielder of the Reds, he made an incredible home run robbery at Petco Park in center field. And maybe I'll play it. I think I have it. But he had to run all the way to right center field, slammed into the wall, and made a great catch to rob a home run. And people pointed out that it looked pretty much identical to Adam Jones's home run robbery
of Manny Machado
in
the
World Baseball Classic. And oddly enough, the person at bats Wednesday
was
to
Manny
hit this
Machado,
home run, or what would be home run.
How about that?
Was Manny Machado?
How about that?
Getting robbed at Petco once again.
How about it?
So on Wednesday, Ryan Noda of the A's got demoted. He got optioned. I don't know why I said demoted.
Well, they're good.
Yeah. He has not been good, but there were a few more A's conspiracies coming out because on I think it was Friday when they beat the Orioles, they cut to the dugout after the game, and Ryan Noda was standing there and he was pointing at the Oakland on his shirt. And so everybody was like, "Oh, see, this guy's happy. Huh. He supports Oakland, and but his stats have been terrible. So it was a warranted option.
And they're a good baseball team, which go figure that.
And then finally, yesterday, CeCe Sabathia was put into the Guardians announced that he would be put into the Cleveland Baseball Hall of Fame.
Makes sense.
And they did it in a cool way because he debuted in 2001, so they announced it right at 152. On May 2nd, 5-2.
Okay.
52 was the number he wore when he debuted with the.
I think we'll always associate Sabathia with the Yankees. I think that's the way it's going to be. But both there and he was very helpful in Milwaukee, obviously as well.
Not a ton of storylines yesterday, but that one stuck out to me.
All right, very good. Break up the Athletics, man. They. I don't know what to say. Remember we were really happy about them splitting the series in New York? We're like, yeah, thanks, guys. And all of a sudden, oh, they're real. Oh, that's different. That's different.
7-3 in their last 10.
Yeah, it does make it bad. All right, very good. That's This Week in the Rest of Baseball. Thank you, Griffin. A couple of things before we get to Tidbit. One, have you spent your money from the Pacers series win?
Well, we got 301 tomorrow. I think it's going to be UFC 301 tomorrow.
So you're just going to put all of it towards that. You're going to spread all your winnings. Yeah, Griffin had the Pacers winning the series. I guess Nostradamus over there knew that Damian Lillard was going to be sidelined. I would say there was every fan base is embarrassing. There was a particularly embarrassing amount of smack talk from the Pacers fans.
Well, they have a lot to.
Yes, technically you want a playoff series, but legally speaking, you want a playoff series. Everyone, I could not do this job in Indianapolis because this would be like when everybody was mad at me that I wasn't super excited that the one Mark Turgeon team made the Sweet 16, and I was like, right, they didn't beat anybody. They played Hawaii and South Dakota, or Valpo and South Dakota State or something like that. They didn't win a game that mattered. They defaulted into the Sweet 16.
They got to lose to Kansas. Though.
Right, where they got hammered by Kansas in a game that wasn't competitive, which you could see coming from a mile away. And everybody was mad at me dude, your team's in the Sweet 16. You should be more excited about it. No, I can't pretend like something is more than it is. If this was a rising good team that happened to get, a favorable path to the Sweet 16, then yeah, I'd be on board with it. But this was not that. This was a mid team that was gifted a trip to the Sweet 16 because of matchups. That's how I would feel in Indianapolis today. It's fun to be a participant. I get it. But to try to act like you really accomplished something when you beat a team that didn't have either of their players, that's tough, man.
They still won a lot of games.
I'm not saying that it's a
how good
joke.
Chris Middleton can be.
It's not I don't think Indiana's a joke. I think you might.
It was a sharp bet. Come on, just say.
That's fine. You might want to settle down a little bit. Now, that's embarrassing, but what's really embarrassing is Patrick Beverley. Patrick Beverley, who had been trying with this, podcast and whatever he's doing with Barstool and all that to, create this more likable persona. And I think he had been a regular with Van Pelt over the years. That was a joke last night. And that video, I get that everybody's mad about the thing that he said to the lady from ESPN where he was like, hey, do you subscribe to my podcast? That's a bad look, but that's all that is a bad look. We could forget that by next week. Him throwing a basketball into the stands and then getting it back because he hit a woman and then, throwing it again at the guy that he intended to throw it at the first time, that's got to be a serious suspension. And then he's on Twitter today well, you should have heard the things they were saying. Dude, no. I don't know what they were saying. And it might have been vile, and it might have been awful. But it don't work this way. This thing where you got to prove that you can still be the tough guy, you don't. That's over, man. I am an advocate for players almost all the time. I defend athletes constantly. There is no defense of that. You're lucky if you get to play in the league moving forward. You threw a basketball at two different fans. I frankly don't think you should be allowed to play in the league. Not for, a long time. To me, that's a year suspension. That's you aren't capable of being a human being. That's so far beyond the pale that I don't know. Again, short of being banned for life is over the top, and I probably would be opposed to it. But short of that, I don't think there's any punishment that Patrick Beverley could receive that I would be opposed to. That's unfathomable, unconscionable. And I get it. If they were using racial slurs or whatever they were doing, this is not me defending whoever this guy was, although apparently the woman was just, innocent bystander. Whatever this guy was doing, he should also be banned if That's true. And there should have been someone immediately nearby to figure that out and get him out. And the NBA also has a problem with that, if that's the case. If that was going on and there was no recourse for the players involved to get that person ejected, that's a bigger problem the NBA has to deal with. But Patrick Beverley doesn't get to deal with it. It doesn't work this way. It's unbelievable. The thing with the lady after the game that's embarrassing, but, like, again, people have embarrassing moments. That, you don't get to do that. I cannot. That has to be a serious penalty from the NBA. Like, a serious penalty. It's a really unbelievable moment. News this morning related to the Ravens. Nobody thought that Odell Beckham was going to be back after, he was available for this long and he wasn't back. But it's official. He goes to Miami, where I hear they already have some pretty good pass catchers.
He's going to kill us when.
Yikes. Odell Beckham will be signing with the Dolphins for next season, joining Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle in that offense.
Well,
hey, man, the Ravens made the decision. They were moving on. They are committed to Rashad Bateman being the number 2 receiver this year, and, he sounded good. You hope that translates. You hope that's the case. All right, Tidbit is brought to you today by your local Toyota dealer, buyatoyota.com. Toyota Tacoma is the proud range. Toyota Tacoma comes in a range of models and trim lines, so you can choose the perfect Tacoma to reflect your unique personality and driving habits. Check out buyatoyota.com today. Of course, buyatoyota.com and your local Toyota dealer, also proud sponsors of County Sports Zone, countysports.zone, for all of the latest in area high school sports.
All right, so Jalen Brunson, obviously in the Knicks, did defeat the Sixers and will advance. Jalen Brunson became the first player in NBA history, or so I should say second player. It's the first since it was done the first time, but the second player to have 3 straight 40-point games to close out a series since this guy did. I think I mentioned it at the very end of the broadcast yesterday, but the second player to have done this. 40-point games, 3 straight 40-point games to close out a series.
LeBron.
1989.
Michael Jordan,
and all culminating in the shot against the Cavs back in 1989. So pretty decent company, I guess, for Jalen Brunson there. I guess not that wasn't going to include this, but in this week in the rest of baseball. But Ceddanne Rafaela of the Red Sox.
Yeah, Rafaela I know, but I don't know it.
Yeah, his first name is Ceddanne. We'll go with Rafaela. He had a very great game over the weekend as the Red Sox beat the Cubs. He had 7 RBI. He went 4 for 4, 7 RBI, and a stolen base. And he's a rookie as well. It's very rarely done by rookies, and it has only been done a handful of times actually this century as well. So I want to see. There's a good bit of guys that have done it since 2000. Let's see if you can name all the guys that have done it since. Yeah.
How many of them are there? Because we also are getting 1223.
I know. There's. All right. Let's do the last 5.
All right. Give me the numbers.
Rafael.
Give me the numbers one more time.
4 for 4 or better. 7 RBI and a stolen base in the same game.
Derek Jeter.
Not Derek Jeter.
And how many? What was the time frame here?
So the last 5 have done it since 2016.
Since 12. Okay. Well, that is relevant. That's relevant here. You want to get in on this?
What is
4 for 4, 7 RBI, and a stolen base in a game. The last 5 guys that have done it.
Yes.
Last 5 guys that have done it, including Rafaela, who did it this week.
Trey Mancini do it?
Trey Mancini did not do this.
There's 5 guys from.
2 of the last 3 were also Red Sox.
2 Betts.
Mookie Betts, yes, in 2017.
How about Devers?
Not Devers.
Bogarts.
Not Bogarts. He's a guy who is currently on the team, but he is
Jackie Bradley.
Struggled to get on the field.
Struggles to get on the field.
And is currently on a Red Sox.
Currently a Red Sox struggles to get on the field.
Dustin Pedroia.
Well, I don't think that he's. I mean, if that'd be news.
That would be big news.
Yeah, I feel like we would have read about that in the paper.
When he is on the field, he's pretty good. 7 RBI game for the Red Sox. So.
Yoshida?
Not Yoshida.
Struggles to get on the field.
Since he's gotten to Boston, he struggled to get on the field.
Since he's gotten
to Boston. Struggled to get on the field. Tyler O'Neill?
Not Tyler O'Neill.
I think he's been playing.
Did it in 22, which I think was his first season.
Did you say it was Tyler O'Neill?
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
His name started with a T. I don't know if that helps.
Name starts with a T. Struggles to get on the field. Plays for Boston. Name starts with a T.
He played for the Rockies before coming to Boston.
Oh, Trevor Story.
Trevor Story, yes.
That's misleading to say struggles to get on
hurt.
the field.
Yeah.
He's hurt.
Well, that's what I mean.
You could say that in a better way.
Okay.
You could say that.
That sounds like a slump.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. He's just not been good. Right. All right.
Struggled to stay healthy. Sorry.
That's definitely a better way of saying.
2021 and then 2016 and 2015.
You're gonna have to. We'll be here all day. We got
current Atlanta Brave.
Current Atlanta Brave. Did he do it as a Brave?
Yes,
or?
he did.
Okay.
Acuna?
Not Acuna.
Riley.
Ozzie Albies.
Okay, Albies. Yeah.
2016.
Ross Grimsley.
No, not Ross Grimsley.
Got you 0.3% though.
Outfielder. Was it one-time NL MVP? I think. Not this year, but like back in like 2011.
Matt Kemp.
Not Matt Kemp. Oh, sorry. So he should have been. Or no, yeah, he was. Yeah.
Oh, for God's sakes.
Did he win the MVP?
Oh God, you got to do better.
Tatis.
His name is often mentioned with Matt Kemp the year that he won MVP.
His name is often mentioned with Matt Kemp the year that Matt Kemp won MVP.
The guy that should have won MVP.
So Matt Kemp should have won it. He did win it in 2011.
That's the guy. It's the steroid guy.
Oh, Braun. Okay,
Ryan Braun back in 2016.
Yeah.
And then one more, a New York Mets in 2015.
2015 Met. Cespedes.
Yes, you want a Cespedes. Well done.
There
Other guys on this: Brandon Phillips, Corey Hart, Ben Zobrist, Shin-Soo Choo. It's a fun list. Grady Sizemore.
It's a random list.
It is.
It's a random list.
And Jeff Bagwell. Those are the rest that have done it since 2000.
Tidbit was also brought to you by Atman's Deli in Harbor Point.
A bar.
Yeah, close enough. They've got a bar. Top of being everything that you love about the original Atman's. A full bar for hanging out, watching games. atmansdeli.com is the website to find the daily specials. And now it's time to get tubular.
There is a place where tradition, family, and community gather, where the aspirations of talented young competitors takes root, and where the crossroads of history, culture, and renewal come together. This spring, experience America's newest and most innovative ballpark, Meritus Park in Hagerstown, Maryland, home of the Atlantic League Flying Boxcars. Plan your getaway today. You're welcome in Hagerstown, Maryland.
Here's what's coming up this weekend, totally tubular-wise, as we talked about Orioles, Reds. Weird game times this weekend. Tonight at 6 on Masson, Cole Irvin and Hunter Green. Tomorrow at 6:30 on Masson 2, John Means and Andrew Abbott. For some reason, Sunday at 4 o'clock.
I've got tonight 6:10, tomorrow 6:40.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying 6:30, but like it's.
Let's make sure everybody gets in time.
Yeah, correct. It's odd. It's odd. And then Sunday at 4 o'clock. Why? I don't know. Is that a every Sunday thing in Cincinnati? I don't have the answers. Sunday also on Masson 2, Dean Kramer and Nick Lodolo. That one is also on MLB Network nationally. Today, Navy plays Lehigh 7 o'clock in the Patriot League semifinals on CBS Sports Network. Was a rough day for the Big Ten teams yesterday. Hopkins loses to Michigan. Maryland gets trounced by Penn State. I don't know that puts them in danger going into Sunday, but as Patrick laid out when we talked to him earlier this week, there were just enough bid thieves that could be out there that maybe there's a world in which Maryland could find themselves in a little bit of a precarious situation on Sunday. But yikes. Towson, however, was victorious, and that means tomorrow at 3:30, they host Delaware at United Stadium for the CAA Championship. Worth checking that out. Also tomorrow, Loyola hosts Navy in the Patriot League Women's Championship at 2:30 at Ridley Athletic Complex. That's on CBS Sports Network. Stevenson hosts Eastern for the MAC Commonwealth Championship tomorrow night at 7. Playoffs tonight, Cavaliers Magic Game 6 at 7. Clippers Mavericks Game 6 at 9:30 on ESPN. Game 1 of the Nuggets-Timberwolves series is tomorrow night on TNT and True TV at 7 o'clock, which should be phenomenal. Hockey tonight, Canucks-Predators Game 6 at 7, Stars-Golden Knights Game 6 at 10, both on TNT. And then tomorrow, Game 7 between the Maple Leafs and Bruins at 8 o'clock on ABC. I think that's... Oh, the Kentucky Derby, of course. Tomorrow, as we mentioned, coverage starts at 2:30 on NBC with post time set for 6:57.
Is Randy Moss part of their broadcast?
He is part of their broadcast, 100%.
Didn't you have him on the show
We did.
recently?
He was very good. Very, very good. And as I mentioned, the selection show for the NCAA lacrosse tournament, Sunday night, 9 o'clock for the women's, 9:30 for the men's. Both of those on ESPN2. UFC fight tomorrow night is on pay-per-view. The Canelo fight's on pay-per-view as well. Everything else, GlennClarkRadio.com. Non-sports for the weekend?
John Mulaney's little live stand-up set. Everybody's in L.A. It's a series because they're calling it a series because it'll be live, I think, each night next week as well. That's on Netflix. Unfrosted, the Pop-Tart movie.
Oh, the Jerry Seinfeld thing.
Yeah. Seinfeld directorial debut.
Oh, he directed it too? I didn't know that. Okay. Yeah, that's on Netflix as
no,
well.
but he says comedy's dead, so. Yeah,
he said that? Oh, that's right. Yeah, you're right. He did say that. Simu Liu is on Jimmy Fallon because he's got a movie coming out with Jennifer Lopez. It's called Atlas, and she's like a special agent, and then she has to fight like an AI villain.
Okay.
And the movie doesn't look any good. It looks like
okay, great.
It looks like
Let's talk about
it. Looks
it
like
more.
It was written by. Looks like it was written by.
Can you
AI.
go on a
yeah,
little
can
bit
we
more?
spend more time on this terrible
I want to do my
movie?
bit here. Gosh. So the big tagline is like she's like, the only way to stop AI is to trust it. So it's like it just looks. It also looks like a ripoff of Edge of Tomorrow, like just like all these like futuristic.
Wait, which one was Edge of Tomorrow? I think I liked Edge of Tomorrow.
Well, that was because that was Tom Cruise and
that.
Emily Blunt.
That was the one that where they kept having to go back. I really enjoyed Edge of Tomorrow.
I did too.
I did too.
But like it's
didn't they
Edge of Tomorrow
change the
without
name of Edge of Tomorrow?
They did, yeah. It was what did they change?
Something rinse repeat or something like that, or like live die repeat or something like that.
That was it. I think that was it.
I swear to God, like all of a sudden. I was like, what is this movie? And they were like, oh, it's Edge of Tomorrow, which my wife and I actually saw in theaters, and we had a great time. Like, we really enjoyed watching Edge of Tomorrow because Tom Cruise is probably our greatest movie star of this generation. Like, when he does this type of film, it's gonna be good. And then all of a sudden, like after it had been in theaters, when they started putting it on cable or whatever, it was no longer called The Edge of Tomorrow.
So they said, or apparently it was also called All You Need Is Kill.
What?
So it's had 3 names?
Or that was the name of the novel?
That's the novel they based it on.
But they wanted to take out kill because apparently
I swear to God, at one point they changed the name. It looks like it's gone back to being referred to as Edge of Tomorrow, but at one point it was called Live, Die, Repeat.
Did either of you watch my nephew's show?
I haven't. The Veil, I have not watched it yet.
I watched both episodes.
Yeah.
It was Jane's birthday, so I taped the Oriole game that night, stayed home, ate dinner together.
Yeah.
And
happy birthday, Jane.
What's that?
Happy birthday, Mrs. Charles.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll tell her.
I wish I would have known. I would have sent her a note.
Happy birthday.
I'm sorry.
I said it Tuesday.
Never too late.
Okay. I'll send her a text today.
I'm sorry. And we watched the first 2 episodes. It's
I'm going
entertaining.
to. I will for sure end up watching it. I was hooked on Baby Reindeer this week. Jeremy Kahn made a recommendation, so I spent a lot of time watching. I finished Baby Reindeer this week.
You do whatever Jeremy tells you to do.
With TV shows, typically, like we have been very simpatico.
I think it's a better idea to do what he tells you.
No, he's actually very good at betting. Very good. Yeah. Life, though, I don't think I would take that advice.
You know, it's funny. I got this. The star of it is Elizabeth Moss.
Yes.
I got her confused with Kate Moss.
Kate Moss, the model, yes.
And then I kept going, this doesn't look like that Moss. But she's very good. She apparently was in Mad Men. Was her big star?
Yes, correct. She was definitely in Mad Men. Absolutely.
Was she like the secretary?
She was.
She was also on Handmaid's Tale, right? Was that?
Was Elizabeth Moss in Handmaid's Tale? You might be right about that. Now I'm confused. Now I'm struggling now. I'll get to the bottom of this in a second. Anything else?
Yeah, she was in Handmaid's Tale.
Yes, she was Peggy Olson, who was correct.
Hosted by Dua Lipa tomorrow night on NBC SNL, and then it is also May the 4th tomorrow, of course. So Disney Plus has given us a Star Wars Tales of the Empire little series, animated series. It looks pretty good. I'm excited about it.
Of course you're excited about it.
It looks really good.
Of course you are.
So check that out, of course.
The other thing, the more I watch movies and TV shows and watch all the gunfire, isn't it unremarkable that somehow that thing happened on the set of Rust. Forgetting who's at fault, it's just absolutely amazing to me the amount of violence in movies. They do it all the time, and for some reason that gun was loaded.
That's fair. All right, everything else?
MILF Manor also started last Sunday,
can't
actually.
Miss MILF Manor.
Did you see the twist that they had this year? This season, I guess?
No.
They have, they introduced the fathers as well on the island. And so
it's on the Learning Channel.
It is, TLC, exactly.
You can watch that on the Learning Channel.
And so they also find out that the son and father end up dating the same mom.
All right, so very good. Thanks today to Jesus Christ, Stan the Fan.
It's crazy.
Thanks to Kirk Goldsberry. Thanks to John Eisenberg. Thanks to Chris Welsh, and thanks to Randy Moss. We'll get it all up in the greatest hits section of the.
Oh my God, it's so good.
Tab at GlennClarkRadio.com.
Can I thank Royal Farms?
Sure, absolutely.
Delicious.
We love Royal Farms.
I had the wrap there, the chicken tender wrap with the honey mustard.
The big winner. Very good. Very good. We love Royal Farms. So let me give the whole rundown. Tomorrow morning, the Bat Around with Paul and Ryan at 10. Rita and I, are you with us on Sunday?
I am with you on Sunday.
Rita and I, 12 to 3 on Sunday over on 105.7 The Fan. Then, of course, we'll be back on Monday. Thanks to everybody at PressBox, all of our great sponsors and partners, including the Maryland Jockey Club, Live Casino and Hotel, Atman's Deli, A.J. Michaels, Guilford Hall Brewery, Royal Farms, Ed Block Courage Awards, HelpMyGamblingProblem.org, Costas Inn, MSAA, Hartford Community College, Glory Days Grill, the Baltimore Orioles, Washington County, visit Hagerstown, and your local Toyota dealer, buyatoyota.com. Thanks to Griffin at Griffin_Bass. Follow us, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Glenn Clark Radio. Have a great weekend. Go Birds. Go Towson Lacrosse. Go Navy Lacrosse. Duke sucks.